Well,
Oh, careful.
didn't mean to do that. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Resident Services Committee. It's 6:30, so I will start with the usual. Let's not all get into live bits and bobs. The fire evacuation procedures for evening meetings. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. So if the fire alarm does sound, please evacuate the building immediately, and the fire exit is located at the side of this room. Exit through reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. This meeting is being webcast live on the internet and will be available to view on YouTube after the meeting. And please can I remind members and officers that in order to be heard clearly within the room by those present and on the webcast, that you speak directly into your microphone. The microphone stem can be moved so that it is as close to your mouth as possible. And please, if you can, switch your phones off or turn to silent. Thank you. So without any further ado, we will go into the agenda. So I have two apologies. There's one apology. So there's Councillor Karen Watts has been replaced by Councillor Kate Tuck. Lovely to see you, Kate. Are there any other apologies? Lovely. Okay, so hopefully everybody's here. Any declarations of interest?
I don't have to remember whether it's part of this meeting or not, but I am a member of the Basingstoke Indoor Tennis Centre.
Okay, so the next thing is the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of January. Are the committee agreed that the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of January are an accurate record? Yeah. Agreed, thank you. I will now sign them. Okay, we're going to move into the next item, item 4, which is the play areas update, and Councillor Laura James will introduce it. And we have tonight Tom Payne and Sue Croker as our officers who are going to provide a bit of background.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us, Chair and Committee, to the Resident Services. It's an opportunity for us to present to you what we're doing and what has been achieved within this area, and also it's a good time to also come along because obviously we're about to develop a place area strategy. So what we will be doing is coming back to you with the principles of that strategy, but also and then after that we will be coming back with a draft strategy. So this is one of many visits in relation to this area that we will be coming. So it'd be good for us to hear your thoughts prior to us developing those principles. But it's also to remind you that we've got 147 play areas that we have responsibility. That's outside of those that are parished. And as an administration, they are a priority for us. We've invested significant money in the budget over the last few years. We've invested in a budget that enables us to do repairs, and the presentation will give you more detail on that, which was very limited before. It now gives us more opportunity to do repairs. What was happening previous to this, that we were having to take out pieces of equipment because we couldn't afford to repair it. So and you would just have it sort of tarmacked over or whatever until a future date when there was some money, or until it was refurbed. We're also now driving forward a programme of refurbishment, and that is, we again will give you, the presentation gives you much more detail in relation to that. So just to reassure you that we take seriously play, and it's very much part of our investment as an administration. So but we're here to listen, so thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you, Councillor James. Good evening, councillors. So I'll give you a quick overview in terms of what we're going to cover. Obviously, we shared the slides just in advance of tonight, so hopefully we've had a chance just to have a look through those. So basically a quick overview of play area provision, what we've got in the borough, as Councillor James just mentioned. We'll just cover what we do day to day, what we have responsibility for. We'll then discuss and talk you through the play area refurbishment priority list, how we prioritise the play areas that we're responsible for that refurbishment work. We'll talk about the process we follow when we go through the refurbishment for each site, and then we run through some of the play areas that we have already refurbished, so from 2022 through to last year effectively. So we're just bringing up to date in terms of all the ones we've refurbished, the ones that are currently underway. We've got 5 play areas that are currently being refurbished as we speak. Well, not literally as we speak, because they don't work in the dark, but at the moment there are 5 that are currently being refurbished. So again, we'll give you a quick overview of all of that. The key thing really, as Councillor James has explained, is just to talk you through the play area strategy and what we're hoping that will provide. And obviously, we obviously need your views and your input into how we shape that moving forward. So that's the really key element of tonight's presentation. Right. So as we've actually mentioned before, we've got 147 Borough Council owned play areas, equipped play areas across the borough, and we've got, obviously in the report that was circulated, you've got the list in terms of where they are in each ward to help sort of geographically show you where they are. And then there are 50 owned by either parishes or town councils. We tried to give context here. We think we have a high number of play areas, though, so it is a lot of play areas. And interestingly, when you compare that to some of the other local authorities, Winchester City Council, for example, are own and are responsible for maintaining 25 play areas, West Berkshire 53, and Reading 82. So part of the work we'll be doing as part of the strategy was really understand why that is. You know, what's their policies about provision, and geographically, what's the need that they are trying to address? You know, why do we have what appears to be quite a high number? But we'll cover that as part of the strategy. Do you want to hand over now?
Yeah.
So.
Hello. So I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing currently and the programme, and then also the strategy. For the purpose of this presentation, we're talking about play areas that we call equipped play areas. We're not looking at areas that are used for play but not actually on our inspection process. So that's just for clarification. One of the things we will have to do when we do the strategy is define what we mean by a play area, because we could have a debate about that probably for a little bit as well. So it's one of the things we need to be able to do. So in terms of our current maintenance programme for our existing 147 play areas, the key thing about play areas is they have an inherent risk attached to their provision and to their use. This is important because risk allows children to play, grow and develop. So we're not trying to minimise all risk or reduce all risk, but that risk has to be managed. And so we have a robust health and safety process around those existing play areas. We undertake annual inspections, and to do that we employ an external contractor who is a specialist in play area inspections, and they look at each and every one of those play areas and they give it a score. And that score could be high, medium and low. If anything that comes out of that annual inspection is high, we have to deal with it immediately. If it's medium, we look to bring it into the work programme, and if it's low, we tend to monitor it. And we have a time frame around 1 to 6 months with the medium that we need to look at to resolve. In addition to the annual inspection, we have what we call operational inspections, and we aim to inspect all our play areas on a weekly basis, and we alternate between what we call a visual inspection, which is where an operative is in that play area undertaking works and just check the area to make sure there's nothing untoward. And then we also have play area inspectors who go out every other week to do a full proper inspection of those play areas. In the week that the inspectors are not doing the inspections, they're doing maintenance. So we have this sort of rolling programme of works and we're continually on top of it. In addition to this, we have a budget for the maintenance and replacement of play equipment. And this is really important. We had some extra budget given to us last year, which we spent very quickly. And it's allowed us to replace pieces of equipment in existing play areas that otherwise, as Councillor James has said, would have been removed. And that allows those play areas to increase in their lifespan before we have to come in and do a full-scale replacement. So for an example, at Eastrop, you may have been down there, there's a new sort of swing for disabled users that was missing. It's now back. We also did some surfacing works to improve some issues that we had with surfacing. So it's been a really valuable asset to us to be able to maintain our existing play areas. And it works really well. Users are very, very pleased with it. In addition to the maintenance, we have what we call the refurbishment programme. So this is when we do a full-scale removal and replacement of play areas. We have an annual capital budget. It varies each year. So for 24-25, it was 423,000, and for that we did 5 play areas. And this year it's 313,000, and we're doing, I believe, 4 play areas. So the way we identify which play areas are next on the list is we have a prioritised list. We've been through this and we've come up with this list of 147. And that's based on age of the play area, the condition of the play area, the standards that we're supposed to work to, and the number of children that we know are living and potentially using that site in an area through the census data. Those are most in need of renewal are the ones that score the highest points, and they go to the top of the list. Every year we do an annual revision of that play area list. We don't take it as gospel. We do it partly on the annual inspections that we have carried out, because it could be that information comes to light that we weren't aware of around equipment that we need to take into account, and that might bump something up. If we have a particularly bad bit of vandalism or issues like that, that might also bump them up the list. So it's a guide for us, but every year we review that list and then make a final decision. So what you can see here, which I can't because I've got the wrong glasses on, but the green ones are the, do you mind if I, yeah. So the green ones are for the play areas that were delivered in 22-23. The orange were 24-25, so that's the year just gone. And the 4 and the dark orange are the ones that we're working on this coming year. The way it works is we go out to consultation with ward members, councillors and residents, and we ask what it is they're looking to have within their play area, what works well, what they like. We then bring that back together and we produce a report on that sort of consultation results, and we draw up a tender brief from that, which we then send out. We go on and have on-site pre-tender meetings with any contractors who might be interested. And then we invite them to tender, and tender submissions are made, and we receive those tender submissions. We then award them based on the criteria that we have in order to review those tenders. So in looking at some of the ones that we have already done, this is a bit of a snapshot for you. So these are the 3 that we did in 22-23. This is the lime pits, which has proved to be very, very successful. It's a lovely site. I don't know if you've been down. I know some of you definitely have, but it is very popular. It's probably one of our most popular sites that we have. Happy child, always nice to see. Even more happy children, that's great. And another happy child, yeah. Sebelius Close, this is in Brighton Hill. No happy children in this one, but it's probably the time in which we were there, not because there weren't happy children. But again, another one of the ones that was delivered. And as you can see from these play areas, they're different sizes, different service, different communities and different ways. Can we just go back to the previous one? I have to say, I do love the little face car on the right. I think that's adorable. Okay. And then these are the ones for 23-24 that were delivered. So Matthias Walk, again in Brighton Hill. Hatchmoreland Park, again in Brighton Hill. A small site, but catering obviously for younger children, this one. And then Oakfields Close in Evangar. Moorham's Avenue, that's in Hatchwarren and Beggarwood. And what's really interesting around this is that you have to make a decision, and this is one of the things we need to think about with strategy. When you've got a play area like this, do you put in one large piece of equipment that is the central piece that meets lots of different play needs, or do you put in lots of different pieces of play equipment? And that's one of the things that we need to consider when we go forward. What is it we're trying to achieve with our play areas? And I'll come on to that more in a minute. And then these are the ones for 24-25. So some of these have been completed. Unfortunately, there's been some delays due to the tendering process that are out of our control, but we are looking to complete very shortly. So this one is down at Sidlaw Close, and it has been completed, I believe. Is that the one that's been completed, or is the next one? I can't remember.
Not on this one, no. Sinclair has. But that should be completed by the end of next week.
Yes.
Very close.
Okay, no, so this is the one here. So Sinclair Drive, this is what it looked like in its design, and now it is completed. This one is for Upper Sherborne. They always do this. They always put lots of children looking very happy in these designs. So, sorry, on that. Go back to that one. One of the things I really like about this one is the lines on the ground that children adore in terms of pretending to be cars or tractors or trains or whatever. And we actually have a train on this one, and it's we think going to be really, really valuable. And then this one is at Rosebery Close and Abbey Road. So these are the ones that should be completed by the end of April at the latest. And finally, Fennel Close play area. The ones for 25-26 are also underway, not the actual on-site, but the preparation to go out to tender on these. So we've got these 4 sites that we're looking at this year. Do you want to say something?
So I'm just going to add, just to recap. So in terms of that extra investment in the play areas, actually one of the key things that we've actually now got is a dedicated play and open space officer. So we recruited last year, and Lauren Excel is our new member of staff that's joined with us. And so she's charged with delivering the play area refurbishment programme, but also taking forward the strategy and developing the strategy. I think it's just important to say this because actually for the first time, I'm sure you're going to cover this anyway, but we're a lot further ahead than where we would normally be. So normally we would wait for the election period to finish. We would then sort of start our sort of consultation period with residents a bit later in the year. Then when you've gone through tendering, et cetera, it inevitably means we're trying to deliver sites in sort of January, February, March, and then we're prone to the weather. And we're also running up to the end of the financial year, so there's additional pressure on us to try and make sure these get done. So where we are this year, because of that extra resource, dedicated resource to do this work, we are way ahead of the game. We are out consultation as we speak on these 4 sites, which is just so much earlier than it has ever been, which basically will enable us to deliver these in the autumn. So after school holidays, that's what we're aiming to do. Which again, just iterating one of the other changes that we've brought in.
Thank you. Tom's absolutely right. It's really exciting. We've brought things forward a little bit this year. Lauren started with this at the end of 24, but going forward, we are absolutely putting this forward. So we're still finishing off the completion of last year's sites. That will happen to the end of April. We have already scored the sites of 25-26. We've begun the consultation that went out on the 10th of March. It will be closing on the 25th of April. At that time, we'll then look to produce the tender and publish that around mid-May. We will award around August time, and then we'll start in the autumn. And that is absolutely the best time to be delivering play areas on the ground if you possibly can. Moving on to the play area strategy, this is a big piece of work that we want to do, we're very keen to do, and it is thanks to Lauren that we're able to put the resource into doing it. Play area strategies, we don't have one at the moment, and they're really important because they allow us to review our play areas, our current provision, and they will produce better play options going forward if we do it right. It allows members to set priorities, so you can tell us what it is you want to see within our play areas, and we can look at sites and usage and provision, and I'll come on to that a bit more. It also allows customers and users to input into future provision. This isn't just about where they're going to be, but this is about what is it we want to deliver as a play area provider within the borough. It will communicate clearly to our customers and our residents about that future provision and where we are going with our play areas. It'll identify and deliver best practice, so it allow us to look at inclusive and accessible play, to look at access for all, regardless of age, gender and ability, and that's really important. And also it'll help us identify funding opportunities going forward, not just through the budgets of the council, but there may be other opportunities that we could look at if we've got the play area strategy. So what will it comprise? Well, we need a definition of play areas, that's number one. We need to think about what it is we want from our play areas going forward. Our play areas have arisen from sort of historical decisions, from new land coming on and new development coming up, and those play areas being part of that provision. And also from the standards that were set about how much play provision and what type of play provision we should provide. But we need to take a step back and think strategically, do we want 147 play areas where they are? Do we want the provision that we currently provide, or do we want that to change? So the first thing to do is the audit, which is already underway, and that is to understand exactly what we have and where it is. We need to map it properly on GIS. We have some of this information on GIS, but not to the standard that we wanted at the moment. And that will include things like the facilities that come with that play area, the accessibility of that play area. Can you park? Are there toilets? It'll look at the age range and the current users for that, and any issues that might come out from being too close to neighbours. We sometimes have that. Or maybe it's very inaccessible in terms of darkness and people aren't feeling very comfortable in the site. It'll all pick it up in the audit. But we also need to do some surveys. We do surveys when we're going to do a new play area, so what would you like to see? But we don't go out and ask people at the moment, what do you think of our play areas? Do you like them? Do you use them? What bits do you use well? So we need to do some sort of qualitative and quantitative survey. Now, we cannot go out. I'd love to go out to all 147 and sit there for 365 days and work out how many people come on and ask them what they think. That'd be fantastic. We can't do that. It's too much of a resource. So we're going to have to come up with a programme of getting an understanding of our play areas, who uses them and why, through some sort of, what do you call it? Snapshot, yes, some sort of snapshot, thank you. Some way statistically to come up with something that's of value to us. Then we need to look about the aims and objectives of what it is you want your play areas to provide. So this will include agreeing some principles around play. And we know we have a limited budget. And so we have a lot of play areas. So what are we trying to achieve within those? So for example, do you want destination sites? Do you want 4 sites across the borough which are fantastic and have car parking and toilets and amazing play facilities and bring people in from a greater distance? Do you want a local play area that is within a certain distance from everybody's home? So, I don't know, 10 metres, 20 metres. Who knows what that distance is? But if you go for lots of little play areas, you will not get a very exciting big play area because the costs will have to be spread over a larger number of play areas. Do we change from a refurbishment programme, which we've got at the moment, to a retention stroke replacement programme? I know of one other local authority that their funding has been cut and they can no longer remove everything. They have to go in, retain what they can and then patchwork that together. Is that something you would like to do going forward? What is that sort of provision? What should it look like across the council? Do you want a variety of provision? So you know you're in Beggarwood because it looks like that. Or do you want a corporate kind of view of play areas across the borough? So you're in Basingstoke and you know that's a Basingstoke play area because it's got the colours or the style or whatever it is. And a big one is around the brightness of play equipment. Do you want it muted or do you want it bright? Do you want it wooden? Or do you want it, as we've shown some of the slides, very colourful? Very interesting, I went to a player in a different district only a couple of weeks ago and they had a very muted palette. It was still recycled material and it wasn't wooden, but it's very muted. And I personally found it very uninviting. There was nothing that kind of triggered my desire to go and explore it. Whereas we went to another one that had a bit of colour, a bit of brightness, and it was really attractive. So what do we want? Do we want wooden? Wooden's fantastic. In certain situations, wooden is amazing, but its lifespan is limited and it's also more prone to vandalism. I know again of another site, not in Basingstoke, that's only been on the ground 3 years and it's been burnt down twice. So there are issues around what we do and how we do it. So we need to discuss that. And we always need to think about quality versus money versus time. So the better the quality of the play area, the more time it will take us to refurbish and replace, and the more money that will be required to deliver a really high quality of play area. And how do we deliver that? Is it in-house? Is it with the contractors? Do we split tenders? There's other ways that we can do it. And we need to look at engagement versus procurement. There's some issues around when you engage with people and how you engage with them versus the procurement process. But we also need to think about how we do consult with people, not just the current users, but people who might be a user in the future. Again, an example not from Basingstoke. There was a play area that was designed for new build. They asked people what they wanted. People came back and said, I don't want a play area, don't have any children. They gave the money back to the developer, and then 5 years later, new people have moved in and they're saying, where's my play area? So we need to think about future generations, not just current generations, and how do we do that in a fair and appropriate manner? And how do we manage expectation? We can't do everything everywhere, we know that. So that's really key. In terms of the rationalisation, so if we don't need all our play areas where we've got them, how do we reduce their number and what do we do with those sites? What other alternative green space, public usage of those sites could we have that's appropriate for the location if we decide to take play equipment out? And if you do want to take play equipment out, we know that's quite emotive. It's very hard for some people to understand why we might need to do that. So we need to think about how we would communicate that and what the messages are if we decide, or if you decide, I should say, that's the way you want to go. Design criteria, that's about do we have these sort of specifications for design and how limited is that within our strategy? Do we have themes? Do we want to reflect areas? There's one area that has, the roads are all named after Beatles songs. And it would have been brilliant to have in the play area that we've just refurbished a yellow submarine. I mean, that would have been fantastic. We missed that. We gave the tenderers a direction to do that. Unfortunately, no one came back and it didn't happen. But should we be thinking about that? We've got roads named after composers. You know, great, if you've got play around that area, you could do all sorts of things with music and sound. Is that what we want to do? And can we link our play areas, both physically but also in people's minds, so they're not just going to the existing play area that they always use, but they know that there's this other play area that has this provision, which would be perfect for them, and off they go. And if they could walk there and think about sustainability, is that something we could look at? And what about the age of our users? Play areas are traditionally for young and middle-aged children. What about teenagers? What about older children? What about adults? Play areas aren't for adults on the whole, but could we? I don't know. We'll see. And sense of safety, people feeling that they have, they're able to use these play areas in a way that is safe. That's really important in terms of the design. And we must link to policy. It's just really, really important because delivery is through policy. So we must make sure our policies reflect what it is the strategy wants to deliver and the strategy is able to deliver that policy and standards. So we might need to change policies or update standards based on whatever the strategy says. And then the final thing we need to think about is maintenance. You're going to create potentially new play areas, which are wonderful, but how do you want to maintain them going forward? What sort of figures are we thinking about in terms of cost? And do we want to minimise maintenance or do we want to maximise quality and variation? Because those will possibly work against each other. We're very keen to get your input throughout this process. So this is, as Councillor James said, the start of hopefully a longer term conversation around play areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very good, and there's a lot of food for thought there, I think, around play areas and all the thoughts. I've been scribbling down some questions, and I'm sure other people have got questions too. So I'll open it up then. Any questions? Sheena.
Hello. In Litchpit, we have 2 swings and 1 baby swing. That's in Pen Gardens, and 1 basketball net. And that is it for 1,300 household. I've actually identified an area where there could be a new one. It's got all the footpaths, it's on the way to the shops, there's lots of parking, and it's in an area that's away from all the houses. but it's a really, really good area. We've got lots of open green spaces, and it's very leafy, and that is brilliant. But we would like a small area for young children in that position, where the basketball net is, maybe something for older children in that area as well. And I think it's really important because there's so many young families that are moving into Lichpit, existing children, and also lots of teenagers as well. And I feel that we are in a desperate need of something similar to other parts of the town. Thank you.
I think this is obviously parcel of the strategy, so we will map out exactly what we've currently got in terms of provision. There's obviously standards within our green infrastructure strategy that talk about the distance thresholds that we currently work to through our local plan process, if you like, through a development control process. So we'll map it out, similar to kind of as they do through the local leisure and recreation needs assessment, as you've seen with provision and mapping. That will start to help us to identify where we've got over provision or under provision. And so going to your point, if Lichpit is one of those areas, we'll start to flesh that out as we go through that process.
Councillor Isaac.
Good evening. Thank you for the report. So if we've got nearly 150 of these play areas, and we're doing 4 or 5 a year. So on my calculation, it's going to take 30 years to complete the upgrades. Does that? What basis are you deciding which play areas should be updated? Is there a relationship with Section 106? Because presumably you are using Section 106 money for play areas. And is there any way that the number of play areas, as part of a new strategy, the number of play areas could be increased each year so that we haven't got a situation? Because I can imagine in certain circumstances, certain play areas will need to be refurbished quite quickly, and that means there may be other ones that never get to the top of the list. Is that a problem that one encounters?
Again, so as part of the audit, I think when we bring that back to the committee, what you'll start to see from that information is the age of the current play areas. Not all of the 147 need replacing. A lot of them will be newer, put it that way. We obviously get new play areas handed over to the council as part of land transfers through new development. So again, not all of them need replacement as of today. We'll get much more data around the age of those particular play areas and a much more informed view as to what's realistically a lifespan of that equipment, how many are desperately in need of that replacement, within what period. I think that detail will start to come out as part of that sort of audit that we'll be doing. Obviously, the prioritised programme at the moment and the methodology we use, that was all sort of approved in 2022. So there is a report which sets out exactly how we prioritise, and Sue sort of mentioned it's based on condition, the need in the area, so there's a number of children living in those areas, etc. Other factors that help us prioritise them at the moment. But I think, again, the strategic review of those current play areas, what are they actually providing? What is their condition? What is the age? Will all sort of help us to really understand what is that need moving forward? What's that cost going to be to replace them? Again, the detail will come as part of the strategy.
Section 106?
So Section 106, so yeah, we get investment. So where often developers choose to provide play areas on their sites. I'll say they're less keen on open space. But play areas, they often see there's a real benefit to the residents. They want to provide it as part of a new development. So often they will provide it on their own site as part of the development. And so it's less common that we get off-site contributions towards play areas, to be honest. But yes, we do use Section 106 where it's provided. I think that's again why we potentially have areas where there may be just too many, because developers will generally provide them because they see that as a benefit to residents when they sell the properties, etc. Again, it'll be something we'll start to understand a bit better when we've got much more detailed mapping to be able to understand what that provision currently looks like. But yeah, Section 106 is separate. So at the moment, the player refurbishment programme is entirely funded through the council's capital programme. It's not using any Section 106 funding for that purpose.
So picking up on those points in relation to what we will do looking forward in relation to Section 106 is you can't use it to refurbish existing play area. So and even in relation to off-site contributions, it can't be used to do that. So you know, you may do in relation to a playground or play area, you can do work, but you can't actually use it to refurbish a play park. So we had loads of work. I'll give you an example in Whiteditch in Norden done, but we weren't allowed to use 106 monies to refurbish the actual play area because it doesn't allow it. So we need to look at that policy as part of this play strategy. We also need to look at the green infrastructure strategy in relation to play. So we're going to look at all of the policies around play and it, as Tom has said, in relation to 106, do we want on every piece of development, how small it is, they're required to put in some play, the developer. Do we want that? Is that what we want, that we put this one piece of equipment in or something, or what do they call their small pocket play areas and things? Yeah. So we need to look at and explore, is that what that we want going forward? Because, and also, how are we going to maintain that? Because that just gets added to the pot. In relation to the 147 that we've got, not all of those are needing refurbishing because of, you know, the age, and we need to understand what is the age of a play area. You know, how long does it last before it needs refurbishing? We've done quite a few. Just to remind you, political point, but there was no money before 2023, so there wasn't a budget. So this is a new budget. We're slow, you know, it's going to take some time, but it may be that we need to put a lot more money in it. We're committed to this as an administration, and, you know, frontline services are a priority to us, so that we need to look at that and what needs to be added to that. But we need to understand that list because, as has been said, if we refurbish and use the money that we've got, not the refurbishments, but the repair budget that we've got, a lot of that play won't need to be refurbished. So it might add to the life of that play area. So it sounds absolutely daunting that we've got 147 and we're doing 4 or 5 a year, but I don't think that isn't a true picture of what it is. So we need to understand that, and that's what we'll be bringing back to you. Was that any other parts of the question that I haven't picked up on, or?
No, I just like clarification from the officers that Section 106 can't be used to upgrade existing play areas, because I think it can be. But so that would be interesting.
Just to be very clear, it can't. Because I'm absolutely clear on that. It can't be, because I would wanted it to be done in relation to, but we can't use that in relation. And it really, I think it also depends on the wording of the 106 in relation to, but no, so it can't be.
Yeah, I did actually ask the officer.
Yeah, I think so. It's about enhancement, isn't it? So, you know, you potentially can use Section 106 open space. I said we don't get very much because developers tend to want to provide it on their, but you can't use open space Section 106. And I think that's probably that's probably more of the challenge we've had in other cases where you can't use it for open space for play areas. You've got to use the play contribution for that purpose. But generally, we don't get very much, is what I'm trying to say, in terms of Section 106 play. And if you are, it's not for refurbishment, it is for that enhancement of an existing facility to provide better facilities for more residents, effectively.
Councillor Hussey.
Earlier you mentioned that the lime pits was very popular, and I don't know how you measured that. My own experience, having taken grandchildren over many, many years around many, many play areas, are that some play areas were not well received and others were. And a quick analysis showed that where other children were there, so there was some interaction possibilities, they were popular with my grandchildren. When they're the only one there, boring. So I think in your strategy, usage, not the view of the parents, but you need to somehow find out the level of usage and then try and find out why that usage on that area is higher than one over there, which is non-existent, let's say. I think that should lead you to thinking that, or analysing that some play areas are probably now redundant, things have moved on. I would like the strategy with advice and guidance from our development control officers to try and persuade in whatever way we can that developers shouldn't be allowed to do their own little play area. I've got one example in my ward, and it's used by dog walkers who like to let the dogs loose and keep them under control. No children ever seen them. So I think understanding what the children want, not what the parents think looks lovely, is important. So looking at usage is key. And I would encourage an analysis of target age ranges. My own experience in my own ward of the teenager ones is that they get very popular when it gets dark with cans of lager, and they create all sorts of problems. So appealing to primary school, junior school kids is fine. Teenagers, problems occur. So then the location becomes very important. You can't be too near to residential properties. But the last question I've got is, are there private ones on this list?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, well, they're not for my ward. Now, the private ones, the management company, whatever, is responsible. But don't we have a responsibility for the safety aspect under health and safety? None whatsoever.
Because they own it, so they're
Right. Okay.
So the ones that are owned by management companies they're not on the list in the report. So that will be we will add that to the strategy to give you, again, it will form part of that map in due course that will show where they all are, which ones we own, which ones parishes own, which ones are privately owned. Again, it will help to give us that complete picture of where they all are, who's responsible for them, and what they're catering for in terms of different age groups. I mean, I take your point. Again, it's quite nice to have sites that cater for different age groups, but how do you do that in a way that doesn't lead to situations where there's conflict between the older children and the younger ones? Again, it's part of careful design.
But there is one point I'd like to emphasise, and that is please talk to legal development control to see how we can decide where the best places are for the play areas, and not developers who probably don't do the same level of analysis that our own officers do in choosing the age range, the type of equipment, location, whatever.
Thank you for your comments. I was just going to come back with a couple of things around. You're absolutely right about evidence of usage. A lot of what we have is anecdotal. It's what we've observed, what our team have observed, and what we're told. So there is no data that I can analyse on that regard. And that's why you're absolutely right. We need proper quantitative understanding of uses. I went to Beggarwood Play Area the other day, I think around 11:30, 12 o'clock. There was nobody in it. I went back after school and it was full. And if you go at the weekends, you can't get on. So absolutely, the timing of when you go makes a big difference to how many people are actually using it. And that's what we've got to think about. How do we collect some data that is meaningful for you to help advise how these play areas are used? Teenagers is always an interesting one. It's very difficult. We know there's antisocial behaviour. You put a bench in, people congregate, it causes issues, people want the bench out. One thing I do know is that, again, in a previous life, we put in some gym equipment, and what we found is that female teenagers were the main users because they felt safe on it and they found it useful. So it's not just about play areas, it's about provision for all ages in some way. And it's going to be difficult because you do get antisocial behaviour, you do get people misusing things. So how do we best try and design in safety and support for people? It is really important. I hope that helps.
Okay, I put myself next on the list before I had a big flurry of hands going up, so I'm going to take my prerogative as the chair and talk this. Ron just mentioned the things about dogs going in parks. This is a huge problem, and including the strategy, we may want to consider dog play areas. There are some little areas where developers have put up sort of like fenced in patches of green. I've taken my son's dog up there. This is over in Marnell Park. They've got one, which is really used a lot by people who want to just let their dog off. It's not necessarily responsible dog behaviour. It's just, it's much harder to have a dog and then let it off. And that way you'll stop people, because we also do get them going in, and then some of these people will have let their dogs foul in there. And even if they clean up, there's obviously residue. So it's not nice. So I think considering some fenced off green space areas on some of our bigger parks, I think would be a really welcome addition. Another one is about the outdoor gyms. You've talked about the bigger bits of kit. You've mentioned gyms inside the parks. We've obviously got some of these, and I've just raised the issue about some of ours we've got, because ours get used a lot in Popley, but they do get a bit vandalised, and I think making sure they're included in the maintenance and properly looked after to encourage people, because it's again ties in with our well-being and sort of activity. Inclusion, we've mentioned inclusion. I think that's very important, and actually talking about the adult things, making sure even having an adult swing in all of our parks, and I know might attract bigger children and get up to mischief, but I have a son that would like to be on the swing because he has obviously special needs and things, and I have to tell him that no, you're too big now, which is a bit sad. Also, whereabouts they are. Now, one problem we need to make sure there's always accessibility, footpath, cycle path. I think parks that are nearer to schools are actually probably used more. I don't know, Ron, if you've got any experience on that one, because people come out of school and that is when they're used. So I think that's a good location. We have a very, very popular splash pad in Popley, which has a lot of people coming in their cars, and it is, as officers will know, causes us all sorts of problems with residents moaning about people parking there. Can we have at least another one in Basingstoke? We used to obviously have the eavesdrop fountains, which were used like a splash pad, even though I don't think that was the original intention. But I think at least another one within the area, if not a couple, I think would be really well welcomed. And I think the other thing, the Appendix 1 data kind of talks about these are all the parks we've got, but it doesn't really refer to the age ranges and accessibility and things. That would be nice to have a bit more data around that, I think, for everybody. And I think that's my thoughts. Yes, please, Laura.
So I'm championing splash pads, and we're hoping to have, we are proposing to have another splash pad or some sort of water feature other than a paddling pool, so additional to a paddling pool in Eastrop Park. But I'd like to see, and I'm pushing for more of this sort of feature across the borough because it's so popular, and I think we need to think about that.
Maybe we could be speaking to SNG in their redevelopment, because that would put one on the other side of town.
Right.
I think, thank you for your comments. Actually, the dog park is really interesting because it's not something I've thought about. I know in other countries they do it. You can get private ones that are big fenced areas, but it's not something we've talked about here. So certainly something to take forward. And yes, all the other comments. Yeah. One thing about the swings, one of the swings we do put in, which I really like, is a big swing and a little swing. It wouldn't help your son, but you can sit, but the adult can sit facing the child. And those are great for development. The maintenance team don't like them because they're much harder to balance. However, they really provide a good service. So again, it's that value between providing something people want and use versus how much it costs us to maintain it. And it's really important we get that balance right.
Okay, right, I'll move. Next on the list I've got is, Sandra, did you put your hand up? Yeah.
Hi. So thank you for this. This is helpful. Are we, on the maintenance side, are we building accessibility in as we go? So when we're replacing stock, are we thinking about making sure that we've got the options for disabled users and for people like that? Is that, because it seems to me like an obvious thing as we're going through doing rolling replacements of equipment, that's the ample opportunity to improve that, to make sure we're getting those things in, because we want everyone to be able to use this equipment. I think Eastrop's a great example of somewhere where we've got a park that really is accessible for various groups of people. We'd like to see more of that across our play areas, and probably as part of rationalising and all the rest of it, it's probably definitely something we should be looking at. Like, if we're rationalising, are we also making sure at the same time that we're building accessibility in from the start? Obviously, there appears to be a recommendation that we possibly have too many play areas. I'm unclear on what it seems like the direction you're pushing us in. I'm not sure. You can tell me otherwise if that's not where you're going, but that feels like the direction we're going. Obviously, at this stage, there's not enough evidence to tell us that that's absolutely the case, and I won't take a position on it either way at this stage. But I understand why you might think that. I also think that there's plenty of people who will probably tell you that having a park down the end of their road is their idea of what a neighbourhood looks like. So at the same time, we're balancing that. If we do get to a place where the evidence is telling us rationalising makes more sense, we don't need all this whole 147. I just wondered if you've thought yet about how we might be able to structure the way that developers are paying for things like this. So they're putting in parks at the moment and we're adopting them. But is there a world in which they could be paying into a pot that we can pay for much better play areas? We've got some great play areas, things like the Popley, the big one in Popley that got developed. That was a fantastic one. It's those kinds of areas where growing up in Basingstoke, that's a day out. It's an event to go to that thing rather than just the park down the road, which I think is really important for us, and we should look at that, and it's how we can leverage that when developers are building something. Okay, rather than you just putting in some equipment there, what can you pay into the pot for us to invest properly in that?
No, I think they're really valuable points, and I think as you say, we touched on the destination parks, and I think we've got Eastrop, but we probably regard as what are our destination parks at the moment? Probably Eastrop, Beggarwood, Popley, and there's one other, was Blackdown.
No, what's the one in Buckskin?
Buckden. Oh, I've
We
lost
have had
track. There's certainly some of our big parks. Again, you think of those ones; they're destinations, aren't they? People go there and can spend hours there because there's a variety of provision. It's not necessarily just the play area. Where the splash pad is in Chinham, it's got other play facilities around it, hasn't it? Children's play area, open space. You can spend a whole day there quite easily, and everyone in the families are enjoying that space. So again, it's part of that audit, understanding where are those opportunities where we think they're the ones we want to see a lot more investment in, because they are providing that sort of facility that people can enjoy, and will attract people from far and wide.
Yes, thank you very much. The interesting thing about accessibility is, do we provide a piece of equipment in every play area that is accessible? Do we apply one play area that has got, 10, 20 pieces of equipment that people can use that's accessible? I don't have the answers. This is just sort of pointing these questions out. And I think we do need to think about that. Where we can, we definitely, accessibility and accessibility are really key for our play areas going forward, and we do look to deliver that. The issue around inclusive play, though, is what might suit one person might not be what another person needs. So again, how do you balance that? And I think it's a really important thing around the consultation of this at early stages of the strategy. Who are we talking to and what are we asking them? Because I think I would really value the input of someone who maybe has more knowledge and an understanding of what their children may require in that regard. So I think that's really important. We're not saying there are too many, but what I think I am saying is that there's a long list and we're getting through 4 or 5 a year. So we have to be very mindful of that. We also have play areas that have a single ladder in them, and that is it. Is that providing play? Probably not. So I think we do need to rationalise, and there will become a time when you're going to have to make a decision. Do you want lots of bits of play, or do you want big, exciting things that are a day out for people, but they have to get on the bus to do it? And again, I don't have the answer to that. I think that's one of the debates that we will have to talk as we go through. But as Thomas said, this audit will help us understand some of that information that will help you to decide where you want to go with play areas.
So just to very briefly come back on that, I completely agree with everything you've said there. I think that makes sense, and it'd be interesting to get into that, some of the evidence as we start talking about that. Has there been any thought yet, or will that be sort of later stage on how we change that in terms of policy? Like, do we currently have the levers we need to change how developers are doing that, or are those levers going to need to change? Where are we, and where would that be?
Oh, there we go. Oh. Right, lovely. Okay, everybody. Carrying on where we left off, I have Councillor Tuck next.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation and so on. I do think every self-respecting play area does need a swing and a slide, but I was interested in the collaborative play that has been mentioned. I think is an incredibly important aspect, especially going forward with the mental health issues that we're seeing in young people. And I think I'd be really keen to understand how you're assessing that. Within each play space, you've got something that engages with collaborative play. So for me, that's normally the one big item. So it's the kind of the bait, the train, the bus, the submarine, whatever it happens to be. I do like your idea of the regional variation and the local character. I mean, I love that. I want to have the little differences. Oh, I know I'm in this area because, you know, the roads are all named after fish in the river, whatever it is. But it's, do you know what I mean? I think that's a great hook to tap into. I would request far more sympathetic use of topography of an area. Speaking from personal experience at the lime pits, we all grieved at the loss of the big slide that was built into the hill. And, you know, those are the things that make children's and adults' memories. And I think you'll see on any of the good quality play kit, and I know some of the ones that you use, that they ship in soil to create zones like that, and we just removed the whole thing. So I would love more sympathetic use of the geography of the area in which you happen to be working. Materials, I mean, our groundsman certainly says timber is so much easier to repair, that is actually a real help. And I think we're not looking at the carbon footprint of some of these things either. You know, I loathe these bright colours, and it's your eye candy. You just got to stop it. And basically, we are overstimulating our children. I mean, we know this. You can tell it from the iPhones and all the rest of it. And when they're going to play parks, I have a friend who does a lot with young special needs children, and she's saying when we move to natural materials, you see a complete change in the way they're engaging. They're differentiating more carefully. And they learn in it really does open things up. And I think it is, I want to relate it to that eye candy idea. It is like, oh, looks so exciting, where do I go? And you think, oh, I'm wearing them out before supper, but actually you're wiring them. And I think we need to look really carefully at more up-to-date research on that. And my last point, which is in light of this overstimulation, you know, where do we have, you know, the willow tunnels and the pebble? I love your tracks. Children love going along tracks, but, you know, these could be pebbles. These could be something that is much more organic and in touch with nature. And I think in terms of health and well-being and all that stuff, we've got to start bringing some of that into our play areas. That would be my big wish.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tuck. I agree entirely about the children's stimulation. I'm not sure about the eye candy, but, you know, we can carry on this debate. But one of the things I was wondering about, if each play area should have a quiet corner. You know, should there be some sort of area that children can sort of go to that isn't that stimulated? I don't know if that's possible to deliver. Willow, fantastic, apart from the issues of antisocial behaviour and burning down. I've had it elsewhere, and they become used for non-exciting, you know, drugs basically and other things. So we have to be mindful. But pebbles, absolutely, you know, so I think it is about trying to find, as Tom said, designing those solutions in from the start as much as possible that give the users what they need, what they like, but doesn't then mean that we have huge problems that we have to manage going forward. So it's going to be a balance, and it's not unique to Basingstoke. This is across the board with public spaces, and we could look at others and best practice, and that's why we're starting to talk to our local authorities about what they're doing that is working well. Because if we can borrow an idea from somewhere else that's fantastic, then why not? But no, absolutely take on board 99% of everything.
And if I also could just say at this stage, and thank you for your comments, I think they're really useful, but is in relation to climate change, I've raised that issue that we really need to think about in relation to the weather, and as it's getting warmer, we need to think about shade and think about So if we've got a metal slide and it's facing into the sun, and we need to think about which way we face these things and what the materials are made out of, because and we need to think about people that are sitting there, parents or carers, while these children are playing, and it's, you know, that there is some sort of shade or something for people to sit under. So as part of that strategy, we are taking on board what the materials are made out of, what it looks like, and in relation to recycling, but also climate change in relation to the facility, and, you know, and the weather.
I think actually going back to what Councillor Tuck was saying and thinking about some of these things and some of the issues, I think it would be lovely to have something like a little forest play park area where kids can get down and dirty with water and stuff. In Basing Woods, they have a lovely little area that you go in, and it's obviously, you know, it's not policed or anything, and they've got, you can step over things, and there's a little bit of water and all sorts of things, and it's, you know, it's very often used as well. And I think they've even got some picnic tables and things. I don't think I don't know, I've never heard of antisocial behaviour there, but having something, so I think factoring in a place where it is reasonably well patrolled, for example, to avoid those risks, I think, is the issue. But if we even had just one place in Basingstoke that people knew was more of a quiet place that they want to do as a feature, as a destination, if we want to call it that, I think that would be lovely. Councillor West.
Oh, yeah. It's just a very quick comment, really, and more just to point in the direction of something, is that just over in nearly neighbouring Aldershot, they've got a fantastic developer-led project that's a destination park that's worth looking at. I know because I was at the opening, so it's a very exciting destination park that was co-designed with a child who lived in the area. The developers did the project. He helped do all the design work. Fantastic in terms of a destination thing. But the reason I draw attention to it is because that kind of working with a developer in that way, where they're doing a large regeneration, we've got quite a few of those coming up, and also some regeneration and some partner work that we're doing with the people who are doing regeneration across our town. They were able to use that to really buy in community support. And I think that also, you know, I mean, we talk about speaking to stakeholders, speaking to parents and stuff, like literally having a child help design the entire thing was really important for creating a space that, like, I mean, they wouldn't have, the developers themselves wouldn't have dreamt it up, because it came from the imagination of a child, and they then helped to realise it, which really, it worked, and you should definitely go and see it.
Can I just ask the name of the play area? Yeah, we might hire them.
I believe it's in the Wellington estate, and I'll research it and send it to you if I ever don't have it.
Sorry, Jenny. I thought I'd seen your hand earlier, but that's always miss you out, do I?
Thank you. I'll try not to take too long. Every time something comes up, I think, oh yes, I'll have something to say about that. Fennel Close, which hasn't quite been done yet. I think Fennel, it's on the list, you know. It's supposed to have been done, but not quite. I'm sure it will be in the next month or so. And this is a little play park that I walk by frequently and very rarely see anybody on it. So I think that anecdotally it'll be very interesting to see, because the new park looks really, really good. You know, the design looks very interesting, and I should be fascinated to see if kids use it. I'd like to think they will, but the current one, which has been in decay for quite a long time, and we've had to take away a lot of stuff because it's completely useless. So what's been left hasn't been very much. So I'm getting quite excited about that one when it comes, and it will be interesting to see whether kids use it. In the Chenham ward, we have everything. Talking about what you've got on the Smallswood board, we've got Vine Park is a private management company that have the play areas and they run them. We have a parish council one at the Chenham Village Hall. We have borough council ones. So we've got everything. We've got 2 muggers. And I mention the muggers because one of them is on Sherford Park, and one of them is by Binfield Primary School. And the play area at Binfield, next to Binfield Primary School, is in a fantastic location because the kids all go there after school. It's great. But the mugger is lit and it has a cover and it attracts amazing amounts of antisocial behaviour. I think any term, every term, parents are anxious about drugs being dealt there and children being recruited to gangs and things. So it's a real problem. I do think we need to think very carefully about where we put our mugger provision as against children's play parks. Very carefully about it. The mugger on Sherwood Park, because it's not lit and I'm not sure it's directly overlooked by housing, but it's very close to housing. We get some behaviour in the summer, which is, it creates a bit of a problem. But generally speaking, it's not particularly abused. I think it's the Binfields one, where it's located, it's not overlooked, it's away from housing, it's lit, people can just go there and gather, it's like a meeting place. So I have to be really, really careful where we position these things. I wondered if a good starting point for mapping and thinking about provision might be what our policies are and guidance are for play parks when we have new developments, because I've talked at length with Catherine Daly and other folks about where we should and shouldn't have play parks in new developments close to Chinham or in Chinham. And it is a nonsense, a lot of it, so we do need to then put logic on top of it, but it's quite a good starting point because it does say, you should have provision for small children within X miles. I think it's 3 miles, I'm making that up, say it's 3 miles. But it says, the policy says, as the crow flies. So, for example, the new estate, I think it's called Longfield Peace at the moment, is Redlands. There is a play park in Chinham that's 3 miles away or within the limit, but actually you've got to cross the A33 and go through people's gardens, which obviously you can't, to get to it. But because it actually fits the policy, the developer got away with not putting one in. And so we had to get traffic pedestrian lights across the A33, and they all come to Sherwood Park, which is fine, they're very welcome, but it wasn't built for that capacity of people coming to that point. So there is a nonsense in the policies that we've got, but I do think they're a good starting point to be saying, we do need little children need to be able to get to these kind of parks, and bigger children, etc., etc. So I think it's quite a good place to start. But I would be really keen that we look at a density of housing and type of housing within our parameters of when we're looking about provision. Because there's little doubt in my mind, although all children need the socialising aspects of playgrounds, there is definitely a need, in my mind, for more play areas and equipment closer to where dwellings are when we've got flatted developments, or in a lot of our more modern developments where the gardens are miniature. We do need children to be able to get and run around. And if they can't run around at home, we need to give them places to run around. It's really important, I think. So that idea of density and type, I think, is really important. I was also wanted to give a plea for visual impaired children. Looking at the designs of the refurbished playgrounds that we've got, slightly anxious. Some of them look as if they have been designed with visual impaired children in mind, but a lot aren't. And this is where we have a problem. Councillor Tuck with colour. That Vine Park has lovely wood-based play areas, and as an adult I went and looked at them and I thought how lovely they are, because it suits me as an adult. It blends in, it looks gorgeous, nice natural stuff, everything. But for parents with children who have sight issues, they are a nightmare, and they need differentiating colours, particularly on things like steps up to slides. If the steps are homogeneous, they don't see them. They cannot differentiate where the step is. So, I did talk to Catherine and her team about the importance of thinking about the equipment that we put in, that it's accessible for all children. And because it's quite simple with the kind of brightly coloured materials that we're using anyway, it's not, when you're redesigning something and putting it in, it's difficult to retrofit. but you know, it's quite easy to do when you're designing it, because actually it's just about making sure that the front of every step, either every step is a different colour and it's a different colour to the base ground, because otherwise it just all looks like one. And that play areas have a very distinct edge to them, so that when sight disabled children are walking across the playground, they're looking for the change of colour. They're looking to say, okay, this is where this play area starts for around the swing or the slide or whatever, and this doesn't. So, you know, they're quite simple things, but I would put in a huge plea for sight disabled children. And I thought don't we ban dogs from our play areas? Yes, I'm pleased to hear that, because I'd be absolutely appalled if we had dogs in our play areas. Good, I'm pleased to hear that. Gym trails. We also have gym trail in Chinham. It was developers' money was used to put in an adult gym trail. It is well used. We want to put another one in at Sheffield Park. The one at Memorial Park, which is just a single area rather than a trail, but it attracts a lot of use, and I think it's a really good idea. That is probably better in some ways than a mugger, you know. It still attracts young people to get to it, but hopefully, because it's in the open in that way, it's less likely to attract people to stay there and wander. And I think that's it. Sorry.
Thanks, Jenny. Did John, were you putting your hand up as well?
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah. Just a question about the parished play areas, because we've got nearly 50, I think, haven't we? Yeah. So there's a lot of them, and they're obviously, generally speaking, in rural areas. In the presentation, they're described as being the responsibility, the play areas as being the responsibility of the parishes. How far does that responsibility extend as far as the borough is concerned, in terms of, you know, who pays for any refurbishment of play areas? Is it an expectation that the parishes will do that, or is it a case of the borough also willing to invest in the parished areas? It'd just be interesting to know whether they're at any disadvantage, because I don't know how else the parishes would be funding the any improvements.
Yeah, they are, as Councillor Slimmons reflecting, yes, the parishes, because it's on their land and they're their assets, it does fall to the parishes or town councils to pay for the maintenance. We do support where we can, so we often we approach for advice about the play areas in terms of maintenance and who they can go to. Surfacing, for example, again, we are, as part of our tender process for maintenance, we are including parish and town councils in that, so it allows parishes and town councils to get the same prices that we're getting effectively, so we get that sort of aggregate of value, if you like, and hopefully makes things a bit more straightforward for parishes to get things fixed, amended at a good cost, and utilise our sort of framework.
Can I just add that the parishes also benefit from the maintenance inspections? There was a move a few years ago to actually make us pay for it, but we overturned that, and it's still being done. So we do get the inspections, and obviously the recommendations that come on the system that say that there are certain items that might need to be repaired in a hurry. So obviously you get prioritisation of that. That does help us actually decide which ones need to be dealt with. But the parishes themselves have to raise the money and pay for everything. So if you're a parish resident, which I'm sure you are, if you live in Evergar, you will pay a parish precept, and that is what is used to maintain any areas that are owned by the parish.
So it's thank you for that. It's sort of the conclusion one draws from that is that there's ratepayers in the rural areas that are at some disadvantage in relation to this, because there's a capital budget that's now been found that will provide capital expenditure for non-parished areas, but the parished areas, in order to upgrade their play areas, will have to find the money themselves. So I think it's a fair conclusion, isn't it?
In the list, I did say to you, there are on that list play areas that we're doing. Significant number of them are in parished areas, one of them being Evangar in your own ward, in relation to Whitchurch. So, we can go through that list. I can't clear you at the moment where they are, but they're actually just coming forward. So where we own the land and where we have a responsibility, we do that work. If we don't own that land, no, we don't do that work, but we do support parishes wherever we can. But that will need to be looked at as part of this strategy going forward.
I'll just add to that. I mean, as you say, it's very common elsewhere. Again, Hart is the same situation. Winchester's the same situation. Generally where there are parished areas, the parish is going to own the open space, and consequently they'll provide play areas on those sites at that cost. So it's not uncommon. Again, where would you draw the line? Because again, they're management companies that are responsible for sites. Again, if you're applying the same logic to parishes, then we'd find ourselves in a situation where we're funding replacements of management company sites as well. And again, you're adding to the financial sort of cost to the borough council to that. So, but we need to review it. We need to get a proper handle on what is provided and where it is, what condition it is in, when it will need to be replaced, and then we can start to have a bit more of an informed view of actually what that need is for the future.
Yeah, that's fine. The objective of the committee is to highlight these discrepancies, and there is a discrepancy there, and parishes have to find the money, and in non-parished areas, the money is found by the borough, it seems, and so there is a degree of unfairness. I understand the point you make there.
Okay, guys, I'm just it is yeah. Rural areas do get a raw deal. I absolutely agree on that one. It's 8:05. I've got Stacey and Sheena and Zanta. You've got another one there, and I think unless there's anybody got any real burning things, we'll draw the line under it there because we've got all these lovely people waiting to do their bit very patiently. So Stacey, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick bits then. I am, like Kate, a fan of variety. I think when you go to one park that's got pirate things in it for 1 hour, then you have to toddle up 3 miles up the road to the thing with the super dragon thing because they get bored very easily. We don't want any standardisation of any kind there at all. No, thank you. Also, yes, please, to adult parks. My God, that would be wonderful. I don't want a cross trainer. I want a swing. Like really, really, really. But also, and then the slightly more serious point, although I do want a swing, is that my 13-year-old just sprouted an inch taller than me. When we're talking about adult parks, we're actually talking about getting some of the, yes, often antisocial behavioured young teens who are damned if they do and damned if they don't because we yell at them for sitting in on their screens as well, and then they can't go outside wearing a hoodie because we all get really scared. So I think if we're talking about adult parks, giving them a space to be at the time of the evenings where they're likely to be out and younger children aren't, but a proper space to be that could be properly sited away from some of the areas where people are going to get scared of people in hoodies might be a sensible thing to do. What else? To that end as well, particularly with the parks, if they're aimed at older children or teens or even adults, I was thinking about, you mentioned accessibility in terms of cycling, walking and cycling too. I know that cycle paths and networks are going to be something we look at. Maybe we look at like an intra-park borough-wide map for being able to travel from one part to another. One thing that teens particularly like to do is to roam. And, if we give them the opportunity to do that in a way that's healthy, that would be great. Or grown-ups, going from adult park to adult park, either way. What else? When we're doing the audits, I know that you talked about multiple visits. I'm sure that they will, if for no other reason but by accident, be at different times of the day, but I wondered if you sort of deliberately try and go at various times of the day, not just to capture different people, but also in lighting terms, where you're looking at safety concerns. And to take that a step further, also, and this is going to be slightly more tricky, but times of the year, because you're looking at foliage then as well. And when something that looks perfectly safe at one time of day and one time of year is going to be, predatorial nightmare at another time. And that's something that even if we can't get around all of them at all times of the year, then maybe our own grounds maintenance team can help with information on. And one just last thing, in the presentation was great, by the way, and thank you. You mentioned the things that you use to rank them in terms of age, condition, etc., and number of users. And I was looking at the ward data that Ellie sent through to us that we requested following the last meeting, and the Popley example came through, I think, on email as well, to see if there was any socioeconomic data in there, and there isn't particularly. There's some sort of top-level stuff on employment and health, but nothing on socioeconomic status of the area or that kind of demographic. And I wondered whether that is something that we consider in terms not only of the need for a play area to be prioritised, but also specifically what we put in it, what other children in other areas might be able to access under their own steam that kids in deprived areas wouldn't. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, there's loads of ideas.
Yeah, no, that's lovely, thank you.
Stunned into silence. Okay, Sheena.
We touched on it earlier, actually. Engagement with the children that are actually using these play areas, and all the brilliant ideas that they have. We could go to the schools in the area that you're thinking of, either refurbishing or whether you want a new play park, and just get their ideas of what is exciting, because what's exciting and looks lovely to us may not be what they really want. And I would like to engage with the schools in those areas and also have like themed areas, again with the names of the roads maybe, or maybe the historical bits, especially in Lichfield. There's so much historical things that are, that are relevant, and it's also an educational thing as well. I think it's down to the children and teenagers to let us know what they would like, and we should listen.
Thank you. And Sander.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments to pick up on some things that have come up quite a bit. Antisocial behaviour is obviously clearly a hot topic around this area. I think what would be really helpful, and I don't know what mechanisms we have to achieve this, but police and PCSO engagement on this and understanding from the experts what really is antisocial behaviour and where that's going on and what isn't and what's perceived antisocial behaviour, because I think that's really telling when it comes to how people perceive areas of play that are being misused, but isn't necessarily, it's just a perception issue around older young people being in a space. I think it's quite important to remember that communities' perceptions of things aren't always the reality of things, and there are experts in place that we can draw on when we're making that conclusion. The other thing that came out, there was a lot of discussion about parishes and players in parish stuff. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that this council gives a pot of funding to parishes on a regular basis, and that pot of funding increased at the last budget. Is that true? I'm not certain what the funding situation is with parishes, but please do correct me if I'm wrong. But that, just in terms of understanding where that discrepancy might be coming from, and the double tax, etc. stuff, be helpful to understand that.
I think the extra investment you're talking about in terms of parishes was the extra money for parish litter grants. So we pay a number of parishes take up the parish litter grants, where they employ people locally to do litter picking and empty litter bins. So that was a sizable increase in terms of the budget that was recently approved. I think it was a 30% uplift on top of the cost of living or living wage increase as well this year. So yeah, sizable increase in that to reflect the total cost of providing that service. Hopefully that, I think that was well received by the parishes and town councils, hopefully. And that's probably all. We opened. Well, we've upgraded, haven't we? Yeah, there's obviously a different investment there. It still comes down to, I think, in terms of play areas, they're still reliant on the precepts to fund a lot of that, or they. Yeah, I certainly as part. So and again, through if they've got SIL money, then again they can draw on that as well as another sort of revenue source to fund these sorts of things. You're absolutely right. So in terms of play areas where we go about refurbishing them now, then our officers will consult with the CSPO team to understand if they've got any particular issues or concerns as part of that sort of redesign work that goes on. But you're right. Again, we can look at that as part of it. It's all about the safe by design principles, isn't it? So where we've got those play areas, how do we make sure that they deter the wrong sorts of behaviours? Put it that way.
I was wondering if any of that information, so I can make it to reports, and or how we can get that expert information into the report that this committee considers, as we're just drawing on our own.
I see what you're saying.
Perceptions of antisocial behaviour rather than genuine understanding of antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can look at whether there are, in terms of the incidence of youth-related ASB, can that be mapped? How much of that relates to issues around play areas? Yeah, that's possible.
Okay, thank you. I think we now come to the point of what we're to do. We're to confirm the resolution of the committee is just to note the update. It's noted, lovely. So now we will move on. Thank you very much, Tom and Susan, for coming in. Can't believe that generated so much talk. It's great, yeah. Yeah. I thought it was all quiet. There was nothing coming. We're going to have a very fast comfort break while we have a swap over. Okay, everybody, we'll get cracking. I'm sure Fiona will be with us in a minute. So we're now going to do the Wellbeing Strategy Annual Update. So Councillor Mackay is going to introduce it, and Helen is going to provide us with some background. And we've also got Abigail and Paul. Sorry, Paul. Okay, over to you, John.
Right, thank you. I mean, this evening, in the subject of well-being, I mean, it's the action plan is where things get done. So I'm looking forward to hearing a good discussion this evening on the progress that's been made. A reminder that the action tracker sits underneath the strategy. Slightly to the side of that, I attended a presentation recently by the Deputy Chief Medical Officer of England, and what came out of that presentation was from some research as to the areas of well-being that should be a priority for bodies like county and district councils. And the presentation homed in on three things: initiating physical activity, tackling obesity at various stages of life, and mental well-being. And the reason I wanted to mention those is there's a good match between those and the first two priorities that are in our wellbeing strategy. Priority 1 being enabling activities to help reduce obesity, and priority 2 being enabling activities that help to improve mental well-being. And when the officers initiate the discussion this evening with a bit of an update around the tracker, those two priorities I think will come across most clearly. I wish I could say that on priority 3, in terms of creating a new hospital and health and wellbeing campus and that sort of thing, that I could deliver something much more positive. But I think it's very much public knowledge that it's not in our hands to fund and build these things, and that other bodies need to provide the funding to allow those to happen. We do keep in regular contact with the hospital, with the ICB and with other organisations to see if an opportunity emerges. But at the moment, I'm afraid I don't have any positive news to share on those two. But hopefully the update that Helen's about to lead us through will give us an understanding of what's happening on those first two priorities that do align with stuff from recent research. And I look forward to hearing discussion from the committee, and I hope it's as constructive as the discussion I've just sat through on the playground strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks for inviting us this evening, committee members. I hope that the information we're going to share with you will be interesting. So just to sort of set the scene on this, we started the wellbeing strategy 3 years ago. We were very specific when we wrote the wellbeing strategy. We were quite specific about leaving the word health out, and that's not because we weren't interested in health, but it's because we're not a health authority, and therefore very much what we are seeking to do is to utilise the information we had at that time from public health and the NHS around areas of concern that we had some influence over in terms of a wellbeing strategy. And for that reason, the three priorities which Councillor McKay has just outlined are the ones that we chose to use, simply because we were able to then look at the facilities and the contracts that we have in place to maximise the opportunity to affect, to make changes to help reduce obesity and to support people in that process, but also to look at enabling activities to improve mental well-being. So this wasn't just about the activities themselves, but it was about providing space or partners that could help us to deliver against those objectives. What we've done this evening is, I'm sure that you will have seen, we've sent round a brief report outlining how we got to today, and we sent an action tracker. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to the officer team that oversee this. Let me use that euphemism, team. It's Abigail who predominantly does the work, so just to set the scene in terms of capacity. But what we've done is picked out some highlights from that action tracker that we'd like to share with you, because we think they example good work that we're doing in some of those key areas and the two key priorities specifically. If you have any questions, obviously we really like to receive them. And equally, if you don't think of them this evening, if you think of something later on, please do contact one of us, because we'd be really happy to address any questions or thoughts. So if I hand over to Abigail and Paul for an update on the tracker.
Thank you both. So I'm conscious that this is a really long document with really small font. So if it's okay with everyone, I'll just direct accordingly and let you know what page I'm on. And also it's split between children, young people, adults and older adults, just to note. So looking at the first page under healthy weight and adults, so progress to date, obviously working with our contracted leisure provider, so that is the Aquadrome and Tadley Health and Fitness. They're running a really substantial health intervention programme. So as it says on the document, they're supporting a number of clients, customers every month. So that ranges between 150 to 200 approximately. And they're primarily working with primary care and secondary care in terms of providing support around cardiac referrals, cancer referrals, people with Parkinson's as well, and also GP referrals. GP referrals obviously come from primary care and are primarily there to support adults living with a long-term health condition. They also deliver a number of health walks in partnership with Andover Mind, which again are really successful. And that's also working with Basingstoke. In addition to that, that's also working with BVA, so Basingstoke Voluntary Action. They run a walk on a Wednesday. We were there this morning actually at 11 o'clock, and that's really well attended, with the opportunity to socialise after, which I think is a really key part to the wellbeing aspect. So obviously you've got the exercise part, the physical activity, but the feedback is that need to socialise and create that community beyond that. So over to the next page, I think I've got around 8 to 10 updates from this. So again, looking at healthy weight with older people. So Hampshire County Council have a really well-established, steady and strong programme. They offer funding to new instructors to get trained up as an instructor, also facility hire, and essentially what they call a buffer to increase more instructors into the system. So I believe there are currently 4 steady and strong classes or programmes, I should say, across the borough. And those are running at the Aquadrome, Oak Ridge Hall for All. There's one in Tadley and there's one running in Overton, I believe. Also, GLL, obviously that's Basingstoke Sports Centre. They have their Move It studio. I'd recommend to go along and have a look. It's absolutely fascinating. It's really fully inclusive and it's supporting people with, again, long-term health conditions and older people to engage in physical activity and movement. So we've also recently received just over 14,000 from Hampshire County Council, and this is to do with the Live Longer Better project. So there's a few main concepts to that. So that is about supporting residents to stay active, stay physically active, stay steady through the steady and strong classes, stay hydrated, and also stay connected. So to combat socialisation and loneliness. So as part of that, just over 14,000, what we're looking to do is extend those steady and strong classes within the borough. It's very much in its infancy. We've pulled together a community of practice consisting of a number of health organisations, but also the health and the voluntary sector as well. Organisations like Age Concern, Home Instead and Neighbour Care are going to be really key to drive this forward.
So what we're looking to do as part of that funding is to extend that provision. We've had feedback that actually it's great that we're running a Steady and Strong class out of Tadley Health and Fitness, but that doesn't cater for everyone, and that's a real problem if you don't have a car. So, can we have a look at other areas within Tadley? We've also been approached by Neighbour Care around supporting their new their community hub in Popley to extend this provision. So I'd welcome any thoughts around where else we can put those classes. I'll go into it in a moment, but we've had some real success with beginners strength training classes. We've named these Learn to Lift, with the primary idea of offering the opportunity, particularly to women, to try a strength-based training, because the narrative is that it's very accessible for males, but we're trying to create that safe space for females to come along and learn about learning to lift and strength-based training. So that's something that we're looking to do as well. Moving on to mental wellbeing, so priority 2 and children. And I just wanted to highlight the partnership that we've had with Relax Kids for a while now. Helen will be able to elaborate. But I've certainly had a great connection with them, partnership since I started in July. So in terms of numbers, Relax Kids are there to support children in both Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, to support children with improving their mental wellbeing, particularly children who are struggling. So those who are suffering with low self-esteem, low anxiety, but also beyond that. So children who have suffered a bereavement, for example, or school refusers, which is a real problem at the moment. So in terms of statistics and that quantitative data, 20 schools engaged from April 2024 until present, supporting 255 individual children across 80 individual sessions. So that's everything that's happened since April 2024. Something that we've that is new is obviously working predominantly in areas of need, but also trying to expand that. So we're now working with schools in Kempshott and Hatchwarren. And just going back to the school refusers point, there was a number of children who were struggling to come to school for a variety of different reasons. So albeit they're in different areas, it's really, really targeted. And I think that's really important because there's still children in other areas of Basingstoke that need the help. Just again, focusing on priority 2 and mental wellbeing. Again, well, this is moving on to adults now. I've touched upon it previously, but again, running out of the Aquadrome every Wednesday, the partnership with And Over Mind is really substantial. For example, in quarter 1, they had 267 visits in the first quarter across 31 different users. Quarter 2, 305 visits across 34 different individuals, and quarter 3, 267 visits across 35 individual users. Again, with that key opportunity to socialise after the physical activity and movement session. Going on to the next page. So now looking at priority 1, healthy weight for children. We are exploring an opportunity to work with the national charity Sport in Mind. And for those that don't know Sport in Mind, like I said, they're a national charity and they're there to support children and young people who are suffering with poor mental health. And the way this is done is through providing opportunities to participate in sport, physical activity and movement. In other areas, they're really established. I must say that they have an adults programme already in Basingstoke. For example, they operate out of the National Tennis Centre on a Monday lunchtime, I believe. They also work with a local table tennis club and they also offer yoga and Pilates for adults who are suffering with poor mental health. So I've been working closely with them over the last couple of months to try and establish a programme for children and young people. So like I said, it's very much in its infancy, but we're certainly funding at least one programme. One programme consists of annual provision, so that's 39 weeks. And we're currently looking for a venue at the moment. Venues are to be confirmed, but conversations with Queen Mary's College and Everest Community Academy. So that is, just to clarify, that is to support children who are 10 to 14 years. Moving on to, again, priority 1, healthy weight with adults. This is happening as we speak on a Friday. So we started on Friday the 7th of March. And we're working with it's actually a private organisation, purely because they have the expertise to offer postnatal classes for new parents. Because the research is, in terms of not just our borough, but other boroughs, that actually a lot of these classes are really expensive and can range between, anything between £5 and £20 a session for a new parent who has a child to go along. So we're working with a studio over in Daneshill to offer 12 weeks provision. It's split, so it's postnatal part 1 and postnatal part 2. And we offer it at a really subsidised rate. So it's currently £3. And the feedback is that is achievable for those that need it the most. It is fully booked. It was fully booked within a couple of weeks. It's oversubscribed. I think a key to this is new parents being able to bring their baby along with them. So at the moment, you've got 10 mums and 10 babies in one room, having the opportunity to be physically active, but also, again, just as important, that social element. There's a WhatsApp group, they're all talking, and hopefully long term, they can create some friendships. Just again, moving on, elaborating on the healthy weight for adults. So we received just over 19,000 to work with partners to increase provision in the areas of Oakridge, Buckskin and Popley. And this is for adults aged 18 plus, and the idea is to provide physical activity provision and movement provision at a subsidised rate. The original concept was this was actually free for them, but I think it's really important. The feedback is that a value should be put on it. So again, those sessions are £3 as well. So we're working with a number of community centres and also Evangelical Church in Buckskin. Numbers range, so anything between 5. At one point, there was 18 to 20 in Buckskin per week on a Monday, and this is delivered by he's a personal trainer, specialises, he's level 3, level 4, which means he specialises in supporting people with long-term health conditions, which is really key. Primarily, like I said, it was for women, but actually we've got a number of male participants, which is absolutely fantastic. And the feedback has just been incredible, and I've listed some there. So in terms of key successes, so I'm trying to read at the same time. So the majority rated their satisfaction as 5, very satisfied. All participants found the challenge level was just right. And this is something which I think is really key and something that we wanted to achieve. All participants who completed the survey reported an increase in confidence to participate in other forms of physical activity. Because I'm conscious with these funded programmes, a lot of them, in terms also weight management programmes, they're for 12 weeks because that's linked to behaviour change. But actually what happens after those 12 weeks to ensure, people have the competence and confidence to carry on being physically active. Just moving on to priority 2, mental health with supporting children. So we obviously have a strategic partnership agreement by way of grant to YPI Counselling, who operate out of the Orchard across the road. In terms of statistics, so this is from April 2024 to the end of December. So number of children seen, just short of 300, counselling hours, just over 1,000, mentoring hours provided, 150, school hours provided, 50. So they do have a number of partnerships with local secondary schools. And also GP surgery hours provided, 310, whereby they place a counsellor within a primary care setting to offer that support. So that's something that I believe we're continuing to fund. And I think in terms of partnerships with Sport in Mind, which is obviously a new partnership, I think that's going to be really key in terms of providing that sitting down counselling support and talking and providing an avenue as a signposting opportunity for those children and young people that want to be physically active, because we know there is a clear link between improving mental health and being physically active and moving. I believe those were the main updates.
Thank you very much, Abigail. I've got a few questions, and I'll wait for people. That's all right. See, Sean's put his hand up, and Sheena and Stacey. I'll start the ball rolling, and John and Jenny. Did you want to put your hand up, because I'll always miss you? And Kate, thank you. Okay, so and Joe. So some of the things, like looking through the tracker, and I picked up, I had some areas of red. Now, one of the main things, as a sort of general question to yourselves, because there is a lot in here. What areas do you think you're really struggling to get engagement with in particular? And then we can obviously tease that out. I think that will probably encourage people to come up with stuff around that one. We talk about obesity, and the emphasis does tend to be on being physically active. The root of issues with obesity is normally to do with food. And I saw there, it seems to be that we did have something to do with the healthy eating, which sadly didn't kick off. So I think that would be a good area that we can explore here. You mentioned about people putting in a plan. You mentioned about people after doing it feeling more confident to go off and do more exercise and stuff. And I just wondered whether there'd be any way that we could look to make sure these people, whether it's with the people that are then connected, then go off and do something themselves to keep it going, because one of the biggest challenges with being active is motivation, and so the social connection can really help, and obviously having some structure in place. So if there's any way to do that, because obviously we want to get value for money out of doing these things and make sure that we keep the ball rolling. And there was a question also that, looking through here, I noticed there were a couple, I think particularly the Camrose Gillies Beggarwood partnership were involved, but I don't know if there was another GP group practice that was involved, but what about the other ones in Basingstoke and what's been done around that? And that's it for me for now.
Thank you, Chair. So I think to pick up your first point, I'll combine that with your last point, if that's okay. Because I think one of the main challenges is engaging the NHS and public health and primary care, and the influence we can have with regards to that. I think the reason I'd say that in terms of challenges, so for example, exercise on referral, not all GPs would be aware that there is an exercise referral programme readily available. Some may, but potentially there's work to do around raising awareness of exercise on referral, and active prescription, as they now call it. So I think actually getting into those surgeries is a slight challenge. However, the reason that I'm working closely with Camrose, Gillies, and Beggarwood is because they have a really proactive lead as part of the patient participation group, and that makes a big difference. So I think it's about finding those leads within primary care, but not only those people, also the social prescribers. They are really key to well-being, because they don't just focus on physical activity, they focus on a whole host of support when people do not need medication, or they provide medication alongside the social prescribing. And also other key players, if you like, within primary care are health and wellbeing coaches. So I take Tadley as an example. They've got 2 social prescribers and they've got 2 health and wellbeing coaches. I'm not sure exactly how that's funded, but that makes a big difference, and I'm really engaged with Tadley for that reason. Just picking up on your point about obesity and weight management, I completely agree. They say that the statistics are that it's 80% food and 20% physical activity. We're in conversations with public health. There's some challenges around obtaining funding for an official, they call it a Tier 2 weight management programme, which is a community intervention for adults who are above a healthy weight range. There are some challenges around that, but it doesn't seem like it's impossible if the right proposal is submitted to them. But there's also conversations with Serco and the Aquadrome specifically, and also GLL, that the sports centre in the town have shown great interest in running their own community weight management programme. So again, that's something that would be considered, with nutrition being a key part of it, because it really needs to be.
Yeah, so just to add to that, as a result of the wellbeing strategy and the conversations that we're having with contracted partners, Serco and the Trust, who are the teams who operate our Aquadrome, Tadley and the Golf Centre, between them are part funding a full-time role for a 12-month period, specifically to help us deliver the wellbeing strategy, and that's been quite a change over the last few months. So Abs has now got somebody that she can actually work with on a one-to-one level to actually start looking at how we combine wellbeing, a healthy weight, being active, and that's something that we didn't have a dedicated resource for in our partners previously. So we're really pleased that they're contributing financially to these outcomes. So that is a new role that I just wanted to draw your attention to, that didn't exist sort of 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, and just to add to, I think it was your third point in terms of signposting opportunities, I think that's really key, and that goes back to my point of providing these funded 12-week interventions, and there's always a place for those because you have to start somewhere. But I think for me as an officer and the team, it's about actually providing with the signposting opportunities, that everything else that is happening within the borough. So, for example, it could be the wellbeing walks that are operating. Also conversations internally with the likes of the Rangers team and getting out in nature through volunteering. So, is there a space to promote these opportunities to the people who predominantly, I don't want to say a statistic, but a lot of them are retired but potentially would be keen to volunteer, or would have the time potentially, I should say. So I think it's about raising awareness of what else is out there within the borough beyond just what we are specifically providing there and then.
Can I just add as well, the Wellbeing Walks is a really good example. We've had a lot of people that have turned up, and then from the Wellbeing Walks initially turning up, we've then trained them and upskilled them to become walk leaders. And we've got quite a lot of the volunteers that started off at the initial stages and then have taken it on to create their own walks and develop the scheme even further. So in terms of an exit route, we've got a fair few examples of where people have come along. One gentleman had type 2 diabetes, joined the health walk through the referral, and has actually overturned type 2 diabetes, and now one of the biggest champions that we have for doing all the health walks, and actually now takes quite a few of them, including the Aquadrome one that we have today. So that's quite a nice exit route element to it that's come from there.
Okay, I think we're looking at Sean.
Thank you, Chair. I think actually the action plan has shown significant progress, and it's great, I think, as a council that we're able to do this, because this is over and above what a council is normally responsible for. So all of this is extra. This is sort of plus, isn't it? But I've just picked out a few little things that I felt was a shame that we've fallen short on, and maybe we could look at those going forward. Is obviously the family app, which never saw the light of day, really, did it? It was, I don't know what happened to that, but there was real opportunity there to, I suppose, support families and enabling them to make healthy choices. So maybe in the future we could sort of maybe look a little bit more at a structured process for funding for digital apps and things like that. And then obviously the Cook Stars program that started, but then I see here and it was just put on hold due to uncertainty around facilities, and that seems a real shame. There is obviously Inspiro that does regular cooking courses for children of that age group, 11 to 17. So maybe we could pair up with them and see whether we can reenact it or bring it forward again. The only other thing that I was really concerned about was obviously the mental health and support gaps there, and particularly through the with ethnic minority groups and the lower engagement that you've seen, and how we can sort of go forward, make some improvements with that. I think it was, where were you doing that? Was it at the sort of the Hindu Society and up at Carnival Hall, I think, or something like that? I'm not sure.
Jump in if I get this wrong, because we did do a programme with 3 different groups, didn't we? But I don't know if it was related to this. Can I perhaps come back to you on that? I don't want to give you incorrect facts, so I'll check those and come back to you.
And the last, go on. So.
Yeah, so Abs can pick up on the family app, because I think we were also a bit disappointed on that one, but we did have genuine concerns, and I think perhaps given a bit of time, there may be a possibility to pick that up again, but I think it needs a bit of better shaping. Do you want to pick up some of the struggles that we had with that?
Yeah, no problem. So I think there were a number of struggles, to be honest. I don't think it was specific to one, but around the delay in funding, I think that was problematic, and also structured agreements that they needed to be in place with the software developer. Also, in addition to that, the delay in actually getting that approved from the Apple Store, I believe. And as with any funded programme, we needed to provide progress by a certain date, and that was around mid-February. And I think it was a really difficult decision, I'd like to add, but it was about actually, getting this app out into the world and the borough of Basingstoke, against looking at those reporting measures as well, and would we make a significant impact to families that needed it the most? I think also going forward, when we look at potentially funding future apps, I think there needs to be more work in terms of engagement with families and children specifically about A, is this what they want? And B, will they use it? And also, what do they want it to look like? Because I'm also conscious that when using an app, regardless of whether it's healthy eating, weight management for adults, you need to have that motivation already to want to make a change. So I think an app being provided alongside weight management programs, for example, is really key because it can enhance knowledge. But an app as a sole solution, I think it's questionable. I'll also just pick up on the Cook stars, and I might have to pass over to Helen to inform what that actually looked like, because that was before my time.
Yeah, so with the Cook Stars programme, I think the challenge that we found with that is there was a very, very specific recipe series that was followed. And I think it was probably great if you were relatively well off middle class. I think it was quite difficult if you weren't. So one of the things that we had the greatest challenge with is that there was no charge for the programme. So what we would have is people just not arriving on the day, having booked the facility. So we would have fluctuating attendance levels. And the benefit of this programme was that it was over a series of activities. So you benefited from being consistent in attendance. And we're not sure that actually offering that as a free programme necessarily motivated that attendance. So I think these are not things that we don't want to look at again. I think we've taken some lessons learned from the programmes that we've run. And I think the Cook Stars programme, I think that early intervention and equipping children to cook is so key. And really what we wanted to do is have a programme that cooked menus from green and amber foods, that stayed away from the red foods in terms of the labelling, and could we generate a relatively affordable set of recipes for families as a result of that, and would we be better off if there was a small nominal charge for participation in order to make sure that people were consistently attending. So I think it is something that we can look at again, but the format that we ran it in wasn't consistent enough to warrant the expense. So that was the challenge that we ran into.
Can I just add, and that's the point which is great about in terms of the strategy. It was the first ever strategy we've ever done for wellbeing in 2022. And this is, we actually struggled as officers when we were sitting down how we were going to word the kind of tracker, because we wanted to sort of report on a transparent level that we've tried certain things that they might not have worked this time, but then looking at lessons learned for next time and how we were going to might reintroduce something as well. So having a look, and this was the ideal time to try and reflect on that current strategy, what we think's worked, what hasn't worked, reasons why it hasn't worked, and what we might do differently as well. I'm conscious that we're due to update the strategy as well in this year. So just really using this as well and the feedback of how we can make it better for the 2025 strategy.
So just one other point around the healthy eating programme, which I didn't highlight at the beginning actually, which is probably quite key to this, is that we've been working closely with the Evangelical Church in Buckskin and Chiltern Primary School to offer a healthy eating programme. So this is a pilot, which I agree we need to build on that and understand how we can cascade that throughout the borough. But this is essentially delivered by, I believe, a family support worker who's obviously based at the school. It's very targeted, so those families that need it the most, potentially those children who are above a healthy weight range, or those families who are on low income, where genuinely buying food is healthy food is problematic. So we've delivered that. This is in its second term. The programme's 4 weeks, and we get around 8 to 10 families per session. So what they do is they cook a healthy meal, and then they take it home for their family to eat, which always goes down well. But I think there's more that can be done, because it's not just families within that particular area who need support. It's a lot of families.
Okay, thank you. Sheena.
I think actually parents really face real life barriers. They're working, time is very restrictive, they've got children, and also it's their financial status, and they want to eat well, they want to exercise, but they find themselves in a very difficult position, difficult times. I would like to see some families supported by why couldn't they have free fruit and vegetables, like they do at they do give this out at schools. That would help them, and they wouldn't have to spend so much money on foods that doesn't give them the right vitamins, makes them feel full, and also exercising, and they can do some walking and cycling, and there is the countryside as well. But the problems are the time factors to do all these things. They do need some more. They need more support, and also I think some children should be offered free swimming for young children, and so they can get out and exercise, and other sports as well, where they're given free. They can go and join and do different sports and try, taste a day and see if they like it as well. There's so many things that make it more difficult if you're on a low income. It's harder for you to do that. Is there anything that you could help them with that?
That's okay. So I think in terms of the taster day, I think the success that we had with the sports day in the park last summer was a really good example. That had a really buzzy vibe there. There were lots of people trying new things or just watching people doing new sports. Not free, I accept, but we do have concessionary rates in our sports and leisure facilities. And they are in fact really quite competitive, the rates, and I cannot for the life of me remember the membership fees off the top of my head for the Aquadrome, but I'll come back to you with it, because it is a phenomenally good price, but it is not free. I accept that. So yeah, we can certainly take those ideas away. As Paul said, this year we need to revise the strategy, so we will be coming back through committee, obviously, with the draft strategy to get your feedback and ideas, and a bit like you did this evening, we'll be doing something similar for wellbeing as well. So we'll pick up your ideas on that. Yeah.
Just to add to that as well, in terms of we are working with comms department on how we and the mechanism that we do to promote these activities. We have to be a bit careful in terms of the comms protocol, which our facilities are and who we promote. So we're looking to work with the platform Love Basingstoke, certainly with organisations out there that are offering free taster days. I know we talk about Serco do it with big weekends. We've got NTA that do it with the tennis centre as well. So most organisations are doing that. Clubs offer free taster sessions, that kind of thing. So we're just looking at the mechanism that we can help to spread the word for that to families that might want to use it.
was going to just a suggestion on these things. Sorry, Sheena. Years back, I think there were a few sessions run which were like family exercise classes, which I think are a brilliant idea, particularly for single parents, because again, it's about managing time and how you manage it with kids and stuff, and getting that out. That's encouragement, because there is definitely a correlation seeing active parents and then you have active children. So getting them doing things together. And I think there's never underestimate dancing and things. It's not necessarily my thing, but it is good activity and it's fun.
We're very fortunate that the teachers are very good at giving some help and advice about nutrition, but they're under pressure. Could there be more expert advice and education that we could roll out so that everyone is eating really well, they're filling up with vegetables and fruit, and obviously, you know, they need the protein as well. They could be vegetarians or vegans or whatever, but everyone would be able to eat well, and that would help your well-being if you're given the right fuel for your body, and then you can go forward and do, you know, exercise, whatever you want to do, not forced into something that you're not interested in, but something that you're interested in. It could be running, swimming, just walking is good for you. Being outside is great for you. Being in the fresh air is great for you.
So one of the things that we did when we rolled out the new wellbeing strategy is we updated our web pages so that there is a wellbeing toolkit on the council website. I think the challenge is if anybody was thinking about how do I do healthy eating, they probably wouldn't think about going to the council website as their first port of call. So it's about linking in with our other partners where people are more likely to ask the question. So as you say, linking in with the schools, linking in with social prescribers, linking in with our clubs and societies that we've got across the borough. And we have got a really healthy sporting community in terms of numbers. We completely take on board what you say. It's not always about organised sport, because if that's not your thing, actually going to a sports centre is rather daunting and it could be a bit off-putting if you're not that type of person. So making sure that we've got real nice signposting in our parks, places that people can go that's well lit where they feel confident to walk, and also providing some signage around if you don't know, if you haven't been brought up in a culture of going for a walk, it's quite daunting just stepping outside your driveway and trying to figure out where you go to walk. So actually just having some real simple signage inside our parks that says that you can walk a loop and it's half a mile, or it's flat and level ground, so that you get a bit of confidence to start off. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. So that's something, again, that we want to make sure that we build in, because we're not trying to get to people who already know how to do it. It's the people who don't know how to do it and don't have a culture that we need to work with.
Sorry, I'll just quickly add in as well. In terms of the concessionary rates, we do work with a lot of the national governing bodies, particularly with the sports clubs, who will support clubs in things like their governance and setups. Particularly where we have service level agreements with clubs, we'll say about concessionary rates. So even if you speak directly to a lot of the clubs, they do offer concessionary rates which are quite heavily subsidised for low income families, particularly things like Basingstoke Gymnastics Club as well, through things that we fund through them. They offer a subsidised opportunity with it. So it is something that we're conscious of, and actually if they speak directly to the clubs, there are quite often options available through the memberships in terms of concessionary rates.
I just wanted to build on something that Helen just mentioned as well in terms of working with partners. So again, very much in its infancy and early discussions, but working with Bernardo's and as part of their Hampshire Healthier Families programme. So this is an organisation that, it's primarily prevention, which is obviously really key before we get to delivering tier 2 weight management programmes where children are already above the healthy weight range. So I think going forward, I'm really keen to work with the likes of Bernardo's to offer advice around, healthy eating and, things like raising awareness and increasing knowledge. So, there you can have frozen fruit, frozen veg. It doesn't always need to be fresh, and majority of the time that is cheaper. But actually, it's about making families aware that that is okay to eat and it is on offer. I think that's really key.
Right. Catch me right. Stacey.
Thank you, Chair. I have like a million notes all over this, so actually I think I'm not going to go through them all because we'd be here all night, and a lot of them are, yay, this is amazing, where can I promote it? So really, this is very, very cool. Thank you. But I just a couple of points I guess I'll pick out since I stuck my hand in the air. This might not be one that has an easy answer. Perhaps there aren't any. One of the things that when we talk about healthy weights for kids, barriers to activity, we talk a lot about food, we talk a lot about getting them active. One of the things we very rarely talk about is how school homework burden is a barrier to time, activity time for kids, for a lot of kids. There's a lot of pressure that comes from a combination of overly prescriptive curricula and the pressure on schools to perform well. I've got SATs coming up, and we'd be doing an hour a night if I was doing it, but I'm not, because it's too much, because they're 10 and 11, and it's too much. And I know that that's not something we can directly impact at this level, but we obviously work with partners, we work with county as part of this, and I think there needs to be a discussion at some level that says there needs to be more of a balance here, because parents can't fit all of this into the hours, and although there is pressure on you to feed them properly, get them to sleep properly, get them to exercise properly, get them to socialise and relax properly, generally speaking, I think the majority of people prioritise education because you feel like a bag of crap if you don't. And that's something that I don't often see discussed when we talk about getting kids active. No, do you know what? I'm going to email most of these to you. The promoting local walks and borough parks and all walks and parks and cycle routes. Do you use what 3 words in all of the mapping for all of those? Because I get lost a lot. And what 3 words is really, really helpful. And do you know what? What puts me off going for a walk often? I see a lovely little walk. It might be out on a map, I don't know, near Whitchurch or something. And I will be put off going because I can't quite figure out where the start of it is. That sounds daft. It really, really is a thing. For those of us who are neurospicy, what 3 words is a godsend. Please use it all over everything. Where we talked about in the older persons, I used the electronic version of this to put my notes all over, so finding everything is absolutely nightmarish. Sorry. Page 26, you're looking at mental well-being for older people. It says about monitoring trends and gathering data on mental health indices in the area, and I wondered how geography specific those were. In terms of mapping areas of concern. And the reason that popped into my head is because I heard something that I didn't know about before the other day, which is to do with loud noises over long periods being a contributing factor to Alzheimer's and dementia. And I wondered how granular we go with mapping in that way. One last thing, and it was, Chair, when you mentioned how dancing is a thing and not just sort of sporty exercise. That's my thing, but also the Royal Exchange is doing daytime nightclubs now. It's a good time, actually. Everyone was a little bit awkward looking at first, but we all settled in and had a good time. And if you can square the licensing circle somehow, getting parents to take their kids along to a daytime nightclub might be the sort of thing that people might be willing to do if they don't want to pick up a bat or a racket of some kind. And also you get to introduce them to the smell and the experience before they go out and fly on their own. So that's a thought. Might want to ask them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Okay, John.
Right, it's good to hear some successes. They seem to be quite recent, so perhaps connected with your arrival, Abigail. So a lot of the things we're doing here on well-being are not direct statutory responsibilities of the borough. But we clearly have got some significant problems, and there's a paper going to council this week about local government reorganisation, and there's some statistics in there about the number of residents with mental health conditions, and I couldn't believe the figures in it, because it compares us with all the other districts in Hampshire, and it says that there are just short of 49,000 people in the borough who are suffering with mental health conditions, and we're only second to Southampton. I wonder if that's something that you think is broadly right. So that would be the first question. Then the other thing I'd like to know is we're not most of these things that we're working through organisations that are doing the health and well-being and so forth, and I wonder how we measure, because measure is always the most important thing when you're spending money and using resources. How do we measure what impact we're having on the population in terms of its health and well-being? And because that's important in terms of how we direct the spend we have got. And then my next question is how big's our budget on this? I have no idea how much we spend on this and how many officers we've got dedicated to doing it. So that's probably enough.
So if I pick up on a couple of those points, thank you. So in terms of measuring the impact, I think each person is different, and therefore the impact on them is different. So when we started off this wellbeing strategy, we didn't have any KPIs in there to start with, because we really didn't know how to measure this in terms of impact. So what we have done, and what we're proposing to continue at least for the foreseeable future, is actually the count that we're doing. So for the first time over last year, we actually started counting the individuals who participate in particular types of groups. We're very careful about how we release that information because of some of the sensitivities around that. So what we are actually counting is participants and the number of courses that we put on or enable through our funding, because that's something that we can manage. It's really difficult, for example, if you look at obesity, how do you measure whether what we are doing is directly successful in reducing obesity? I genuinely can't think so of how we do that, but I'm really grateful for anybody who can and can put into that. We do work with public health and with NHS partners. We do look at their data. It is quite granular. It goes down beyond ward level to community level on some of the information that we have. And that's how we came up with these 3 strategies originally, was actually using that data around the facts and figures for Basingstoke. We do have a population, we're above average in terms of the number of people that participate in sport, but equally we have higher childhood obesity rates. So it's that looking to the future thing that I think is the big challenge, because I think in Basingstoke either you do it or you don't do it at all. So it's trying to get people to just do that bit in the middle that would make life outcomes better. So I think that will be an ongoing challenge. So yeah, really happy to get committees' ideas around the how do we measure the quality of what we're doing on individual outcomes. that would be really useful. Really like the idea around the daytime nightclubs as well. Is there anything that we want to add there around Southampton? I can't really comment on the Southampton statistics because I don't know how those.
Statistics. I was asking you whether you recognised that something like a quarter of the population of Basingstoke having mental health problems. Is that something that you think is completely incorrect, or is what you understand is close to and also what your budget is?
Yeah, so we've got one officer, and the budget's about 19,000.
That tells me a lot, actually. Yeah. It's not a big budget, so that's good to know.
Thank you. Oh.
Thank you. Just to pick up on the measurements as well. Obviously, Helen's spoken about the numbers, the statistics, and the quantitative side of things. But I think working with partners to understand, we don't like to use the word case studies, do we? But the stories of change in terms of how this has impacted someone's life on the ground. And I take an example of a school refuser who was refusing to come into school. And from Relax Kids, it might be, amongst other interventions, I must say, but is now happy to come into school and actively engage. And I think that is just really significant.
Sorry, I'll just quickly add in as well. We're looking to introduce other things and platforms called Moving Communities, which is a Sport England based assessment. So it gives you almost really good tangible evidence and information regarding kind of also the health outcomes, but also cost savings and impacts that would have on NHS services, that by activities or available activity on facilities, and what that could save on future costs and reductions on type 2 diabetes. So we're looking at those schemes as well, and how we're going to dovetail that and introduce it in for measurement purposes.
Thank you. Okay, Kate.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to put a plea out on the sporty bits for yoga, mum and baby yoga. I thought it was brilliant when I did that. Within the confines of what you've set yourself in the last strategy, I think you've done some amazing work. I think there's been a lot going on, and it must have been a real uphill battle. I totally agree with you, Helen, that it's very sport focused, and it's very much a you do it or you don't do it, and I am not picking up a hockey stick anytime soon. Fortunately, walking and gravels in Petty's Brook is my thing. I went to an inspirational talk by Dr. Richard Claxton, as it happens, a couple of months ago. He's a GP who is really into horticulture for well-being. And I was blown away by some of the statistics that he quoted. And I do feel in your revised strategy and update, this is an area that we could actually, for not a whole lot of cost, make an absolutely massive impact. So, for instance, it works at both preventative and treatment levels. Just a horticulture or natural environment, heart rate and blood pressure impact is seen within minutes. A fall in blood cortisol levels when spending time in green spaces, as well as being a stress hormone. Cortisol is also an immune system suppressant. A Dutch study showed that every 10% increase in regular exposure to gardens and green space gives an improvement in health equivalent to being 5 years younger. What's not to like? Mind, as a treatment for mental health problems, Mind compared short walks through a garden with walks in a shopping complex. I wonder whether to take a vote around the room on this, but basically they found that the former, the walk around the garden, improved mental health, whereas the latter made it worse. Not only does regular gardening impact the risk of dementia, but it reduces it by 36%. And in terms of if you've got dementia, it slows its progression, delays symptoms, showing greater effects with engagement, agitation, depression, mood, stress, and medication use in people with dementia. I've got a couple more points. In terms of treatment of physical illness, a meta-analysis of the effects of gardening on health found that horticultural therapies showed reductions in depression, anxiety, and body mass index, as well as increases in life satisfaction, quality of life, and sense of community. And there were some brilliant side effects, like, the natural environment is improved as well as community angles. And economic arguments. The financial cost of mental illness is at least 41.8 billion annually in England alone, but the broader social and economic losses could represent as much as 77 billion. A mined nature-based intervention programme to 12,000 people resulted in savings through reduced NHS and benefits spend with increased tax contributions of £7,082 per participant. These numbers are just staggering. So it's when you look at the cost of lost opportunity, let alone how that poor individual feels, I feel there is a whole world there that we could work more with. And my last point would be in a natural health service, improving lives and saving money document, the Wildlife Trust's study of 5 pilot projects showed that if scaled up, offering one of these nature-based programmes to an estimated 1.2 million people could lead to an annual saving of 635.6 million. I mean, the benefits, economic and personal, as well as social, cultural health, are just staggering. And I just would really hope that my request would be that when you revise your strategy, that you really look at how we can increase our access to horticultural community gardens, as well as increasing interactions. I love the wellbeing walks. I happened across one in Blackdown one time, and it was great, and I could see that great stuff was being done. And it's making it drawing people into those spaces. It's having those spaces in terms of the roads and places they walk past daily makes a difference. And I think these are things that we could really do. Things like I did persuade our parish council last night that one of the allotment patches we're not using, could we use that as a community one for wellbeing and try and get someone to help coordinate that. I think there are little things we can do like that, dotted all over. And that would be my plea.
Thank you, Kate. As soon as you said that, oh yes, of course, the community gardens thing, it's something I think we should look at doing, because that ties in with healthy eating. And obviously Catherine runs Inspiro and does all that over there, but that's her doing her thing. But we could definitely pick up on that one quite easily. I'm starting to envisage seeing our walkers going out with litter pickers and volunteering to do that, and other people going around cutting the grass. Anyway, I'll save some of the budget. But the other side, allotments actually. Allotments are quite big and quite daunting. And in the same way you talk about getting people in, there's always a lot of demand for allotments. So it would be really useful to consider, as part of this strategy and working with the guys doing the allotments, getting small starter patches or allowing people to share plots and making sure we get the turnover, because I know when I've gone round some of our plots, they do allow them a couple of years sometimes to be sure they're not going to go back to them. But when you've got a long waiting list, I don't know what the waiting list's like now. I think looking at that, because that is a huge benefit to wellbeing for sure. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm conscious of the time. Everybody is. Jo.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. Obviously, I work with Abigail with the Tadley Wellbeing Forum, which is a great place because we're doing lots of things that we can all do together. And quite right, our budget is very small. Abigail is one person. So we are very much dependent on working with partners, and I think that's something that we can do. And one of the things that has come out of some of that discussion is actually looking at not just the fact that children need to know how to cook, but their parents need to know how to cook. and elderly people need to know how to cook if they've just lost a partner who did all the cooking, whether that's male or female. And again, that means that people don't know how to do basics. And unfortunately, I think that part of education for a while, it didn't actually do home economics or whatever we want to call it these days. And people don't know how to cook healthy food. And therefore, they are much more reliant on going and picking up something in the supermarket that's got lots of additives and etc. So, and of course, you've got to have the right people to be able to deliver that. I did offer to do it. I said, I can show people how to cook. Well, have I got the MV crew and whatever it is? Obviously, we need to start working with organisations like A Concern and people like that to do that. But obviously, the schools, my school has got a new contract with a supplier, which we've just put out. And one of the things that they will do, they've only just started, they will offer us some help with teaching parents how to make healthy food, which is great. And again, talking about having fruit and vegetables, our greenhouse people in Tadley produce food that goes to the food bank so that people do benefit from that. They also take it to the food pantry where anybody can go and walk in for a small amount of money to get things. So there are things going on in our area which are fantastic. And the social prescribers we've got there are really keen. They've brought that about the elderly people not learning how to cook as well. So that's great. Another thing that I don't think we thought about, and many of you may be seeing on the news today, is that Gareth Southgate has been talking about the problem with young men and their health and well-being and their thought processes and how we can do something about that. And there was a programme on the TV, on the radio this morning, in Radio Berkshire, actually interviewing a gentleman who actually works at the Roger Morris place in Basingstoke, and actually does sessions for men and young people, well, young men, older men, to get together and just talk about things and talk about the way things moving. I don't know whether we know, I can't remember the name of the organisation now. It went in mentally, but I was driving, so I couldn't write it down. So again, these are groups out there that are already doing those sort of things. But I think it's important that we remember not just that women suffer from anxiety, but that men do as well. And I know men shed and things like that get the older people, but looking at how we can help young men realise that those things that Gareth Southgate talked about and we all know are happening, it will help women as well as men. So I think we need to probably look and see whether we can work with other organisations to do that as well. But all the other things have already been picked up. I think there's lots of good news and there's lots of things in the strategy that, considering we have one person and we have a small amount of money, if you actually look at what's been delivered in the short period of time we've been able to, I think there's an awful lot we can do. We can release other information, other people to help, and getting people to know where to go and look, as you quite rightly say. First thing you don't think is, oh, let's go and look at the Borough Council website. I'm sure it's tells me how to cook a healthy meal. No, it doesn't. But obviously we can signpost and organisations can signpost. So again, it's how we make sure that message gets out there and we work with those organisations. So thanks very much for the work you've been doing. I know we'll be looking at the strategy in the future and hopefully we can actually add some more benefit to that as well. But thank you.
Thanks, Jo. I have been reminded we have been 3 hours. I apologise that I've allowed the meeting to run on, and you've got a bus at 10 o'clock. So we need to agree how it is. We are. That is all the questions I've had from everybody. I think it has been really useful. But how long we continue for? Oh, Jenny, you see, you said I probably would, but you didn't put your hand up. Carrie, Jenny, last question.
Let's just be clear about this. I take some responsibility for this strategy because it was started by myself. And, you know, congratulations for getting it this far, because it was, as Helen said, really, really difficult to think about how we put together a strategy for something we have no statutory responsibility for. And so we purposely didn't have measurements because a lot of these activities are things that other people are initiating and that we are doing our best to support and make them happen by providing venues, by helping with promotion, whatever it is. So they're often not things that we have taken, it's what we put into it. And so I think, we've done really, really well. So thank you very much for that. But having said that, I think when we go forward, if we could think about in the next strategy, we need to talk about the things that are actually initiated and led by other organisations that we are helping and participating in, separate them out, because it's still good work that we're doing and supporting them. But I think we need to be clear, because I think there is a bit of confusion that perhaps we are doing some of these things, well, actually we aren't. We're supporting them. They're being led by other organisations. And create the difference between that and stuff that we pay for and initiate ourselves, because I think that is an important distinction. I think that we have, as Kate's talked about, we have potentially other things that would be quite nice to bring in. So, for example, our conservation groups. We're doing fantastic work as a borough council, getting people out and working in conservation. Chinham Conservation Group, Sheffield Park, there's all over the borough. There are some excellent conservation groups, and I have noticed that they have encouraged people with mental health issues to come along. They don't demand much from them. They embrace them. They enable them to participate how they can. Children, the Cubs, the Scouts in Sheffield Park, they're going to use some of the green spaces to help have nature sessions with the conservation group. So I think that is something that we could bring in. If there's ways of supporting the masses of great repair cafes and men's sheds that are popping up everywhere, men's mental health is really, really important. I don't think they necessarily need support from us, but it would be great to be able to reach out to them and say, do they? Because that's really good. Yeah, exactly. They're really, really good, and it is mostly, it's not exclusively men, of course, but
we need volunteers, but training, it's skills.
Exactly. They are brilliant, and I feel that when the ones I've been to, that there's a lot of men who feel their self-esteem is really helped by being there and supporting them. And I'm still concerned though about concessionary access to things, and actually how do people on really low incomes get into things. When we created this strategy, one of the levers that it is talked about in the action plan that we wanted to pull was where we had contractual relationships with people, with community centres and with sporting venues. I mean, you talked about the Aquadrome as one of them, the NTA is one of them, where we would lever those contracts to build health and well-being and enable access and entry level to things to happen. And I don't want to take lots of time up this evening, but I think it would be helpful for us to understand better than this report is telling us at the moment, how we have levered that. Has it been an area that we've been able to get success from? Because that's what we thought we would be able to do when we wrote this, is to use the levers that we could use, and contractual relationships was one of those. And I'm particularly interested in low income and people with disabilities of various kinds, and are they able to access sports and those other things, and not just people who have concessionary rates. Sorry to take your time.
I just want to, I don't know, are we okay to say so? We'll finish at 10, definitely. Where's your bus leaving from, Joe? Is that what time it leaves? No, I mean at 10 o'clock, right. We've all,
sorry, I'm afraid I need to.
and you need to go as well, Fiona. Thank you very much for your time. So we've got, let's try and finish by about very quickly now, because we've got to do. Jenny, I know you have an ask on the work we've got the work programme thing. I'll quickly summarise because I've got to do that. So we've talked an awful lot about what's been in here and all the good bits. I'll just say I've written loads of other notes, but some of the issues are around really making sure you've got the right contacts to get things done, and that's the key thing, is your facilitators and signposters, and that's the main thing. And there's obviously, it's quite a low budget, but I think there has been an awful lot of good stuff. Nutrition is something that's come out of something, and also all sorts of different suggestions about how we can expand on and look at engaging with other areas that haven't been covered to make things better. I'll leave it at that because I think that is enough. And so quickly, we provided feedback on the action tracker and progress on the wellbeing strategy today, and I think we have achieved that. Thank you. So The next item on 6 is recommendation tracker. We've got the recommendation tracker, which is just for noting. Noted item 6. Is that all we need to do on that one? Ellie, that's right, isn't it? Yeah. And then the next one is review of the work programme. And I know, Jenny, you might have something to say.
I talked to Jackie about this.
Yes, and sorry, the officers, you may go. Thank you very much for your time, and sorry it's run over.
So I talked to Jackie yesterday about this, and I would like to propose that we have a task and finish group coming from the health strategy that we had this evening and the full council vote to ensure that cost of playing sports across the borough was not, that it's an affordable level. At our budget meeting, we didn't vote through some of the increases. And this discussion here, we talked about accessibility to sport. So I would like us to create a task and finish group to look at how our contracts that we have with sporting facilities ensures that we do enable people to access sport across demography, income levels, disability, and just make sure that we are levering them as we should. And I'm told that a lot of this stuff is confidential, therefore we can't take it in this kind of arena because it's contractual. So therefore, if we take it out into a task and finish group, then presumably we can have some open and honest conversations about it. That was my proposal.
So how does the committee feel about that? Do you think that's a good idea? Good, excellent. So I think, Jenny, if you want to fill in the form and get it to Ellie, I think that'd be the best thing, and we'll go from there. And Sandra would like to be on that group. Anybody else particularly interested in it already? Sheena, Xander. Yes, I would. Jenny, myself. Anyone else? There might be, yes, so that's why we'll reach out to the other groups for. Thank you very much. And I think we've got nothing on. We've only got the buildings policy in June on the thing. We'll leave it at that for the moment. And thank you very much. Everyone's gone. Get yourself home. Thank you.